order. I would like to, if you don't mind, say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. Introduction of goals. Obviously, we'd like to come to some resolve with this whole issue. It's something that everybody can live with. Not sure where that's going to take us, but we're going to try to get there.
Okay.
You know, one thing, and I wasn't at all the meetings, guys, so I got to apologize. So I mean, maybe it's good that I wasn't. I don't know. I got a little bit of a download from Carl about some of them, but not really. But the couple that I was at, I mean, it could get a little heated. You know, I would just ask that between us, you know, we all be respectful of, you know, our thoughts and our opinions, and you know, we are going to disagree on some things, but let's try to work through it and make sure that we can come to a good result with this, you know, and understand that that's really, at the end of the day, what we want to do. At least that's what I want to do. And I think that's what everybody here wants to do. And I think that's what the board wants to do. That's why we keep pushing it off, because there aren't a lot of, you know, this is a difficult thing to try to figure out. So with that, there was one thing I did want to let you guys know, and I'm going to let Diane talk a little bit. Carl had been working to try to come up with a fourth alternative, something that, quite honestly, I kind of thought was a good solution. We probably don't have to spend a lot of time on it, because we found out on Monday that we can't do it, and we can, I'll defer that a little bit to Diane, because she knows a little bit more about it after we talked on Friday. But we'll kind of set the table with, you know, where we're at with what our alternatives are, you know, what the village kind of wants to do, what you guys obviously want to do, and see what we can come up with. So, do you want to, or do you want me to try to explain?
Well, I mean, I can. It's just that technically going according to the order on the agenda, we should talk about the goals before we get into the objectives before we get into the alternatives.
Prioritization of objectives, okay.
And if you...
What did we talk about?
The objectives were, you know, because one of the things that's been difficult...
Right.
Yeah, that's been difficult is, it's like a moving target, is that staff has been directed to, you know, minimize the assessment, then it was minimize the project, then it was not have development, so so we need to know what's the most important.
So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, the question is, you know, at least in your guys' mind, you know, obviously you don't want anything done. I get that. But is money and the cost of it more of a factor, or is the road going in more of a factor, or where does that land?
It varies a little. So the whole, where this all started with, and I'm sorry to get to for the explanation here. So, you know, the assessment was a surprise. Okay, so nobody really knew this was coming. You know, there's maybe a handful of people that realized that this was even a possibility. And to be honest, even if I had seen this in the title documentation, I understand that it's out there. Even if I had seen it, I would have interpreted that in my view as being something that was the intent being to pay for the roads and the curb and gutter, because when the subdivision was created, it was gravel, right? I mean, in my view, that was the intent, right? I would have never anticipated that there would be a road 2.5 blocks away from my house that, you know, somebody would say, hey, you got to pay $3,000 to put in, right? It just doesn't, that doesn't come about in your everyday life. Okay, so So when the money part started, when the initial assessment came out, it was like, are you kidding me? You know, this has nothing to do with us. Why would we want to pay for this? So it started out as a money issue, and the idea of minimizing the impact of the financially minimizing the impact is a priority. But there are a number of residents that live on what could potentially be a throughway, depending on how the project ends, that it would significantly impact the livability and the conditions, and we use Bob's word, the traffic patterns in their areas. I mean, there's people that live right on Gabriel that, and I went and talked to everybody. So I'm pooling what everyone said to me. The money is an important issue, more so to some than others. I mean, I have people that have told me that $1,000 is my camping for the whole summer. That, you know, that's you know, and I've looked at it, and I spoke one time at the meeting and said, look, $3,000 is my family's vacation. That's it, it's gone. For a road that's 2.5 blocks away that really serves no purpose for us, right? I understand that it was on the road and everything. So it is a mix between, you know, and I think that there has to be, you know, as you put it, there has to be a way to come up with a solution that's livable, right? Because if we don't, or if after this, if the board doesn't, you know, it doesn't just go away.
Right, no, absolutely.
Yeah, money is huge, but, I mean, we did echo, I mean, and it is a big thing, is the safety of the subdivision, and that if it was under different circumstances, we might be talking different, but that development, it changes everything. And that will be, I mean, we looked at the plans, that road goes through, it will be a parking lot for that subdivision. We can argue about that, but that's reality. It's gonna happen. They're gonna be running up and down. There are literally 60-some kids in that subdivision that run freely, and there is no traffic right now. You'll have a couple cars coming through a day. Traffic and from apartments and townhomes, their care about neighborhoods is completely different than people that reside there. And we could argue about that also, but it's a fact. And also everyone's safety there. I mean, the police are called to the current ones all the time. It's just a different atmosphere.
The current one,
to the current apartments. I mean, and that's, I don't want to stray from anything, but we're talking about,
okay.
Let's come back. So money is huge to that point, but the safety of that road going through is right up there also.
Okay.
So we have to strike a balance somewhere, is where it basically comes down to. And there's certain points that would become unacceptable.
Okay.
I mean, and there's, you know, there may be some compromises to be made, but there's some where people are just gonna say, well, what's next now?
Okay. And when you talked about, you know, when this first started, I guess it just kind of, I'm just thinking, I don't think I'm gonna say anything that was in closed session, and if I start to, you stop me.
We've never talked about the assessment in closed session or the Michael
Okay.
Ritger project.
Okay, then I can.
You're good.
I get yelled at every time I do stuff like that.
Just tell John not to write it down.
I feel
When
free.
when this first,
rules
I
because
mean, just so you
follow
guys
some.
understand, when this first came up, I mean, I remember the meeting, and it was, and this really has nothing to do with, but I just want to give you how it started for us. It was almost just a housekeeping item on our agenda. It was, hey, Michael Richter, we need to do this, we need to do this assessment, we need, you know, this is just, you know, it's been approved, it was through this, it was through that. You know, so let's just get, you know, we just need to do this, and I think I even remember saying, you know, they understand all this, well, you know, it's in their thing, but yep, everybody said no problem, okay, we did it, you know, I mean, and it was an item on the agenda that we do
Every day.
you know, so it wasn't like, okay, what can we do to screw the people up at Parker Heights today? I mean, it just wasn't, you know, and And I'm not saying that feeling or that animosity is there, but it really was honestly that simple. So, and I just wanted to share when you said, when this first came up. So, let me ask this question. And I don't know the answer to it, but if the concern is safety, and Brian, what I would argue is, we have all kinds of city streets, and they're all pretty much safe. And my kids grew up on Double T, and I got cars flying back and forth there all the time. We never had an incident, never liked it, and I always called the cops because there was, it's a 25 mile, and then I got guys going 45 and 50. But again, I understand your concern, believe me, because I had it when my kids were there. You don't want a lot of traffic. I chose that place. T was there, Double T was there, so I had nothing to, that's not, somebody didn't plop a road in there on me and say, deal with it. So, again, I'm just making the comment that
I hear what you're saying. I grew up on Highway 76.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's
different, but I grew up, it's, to your point, it wasn't there.
Right, no, I get it.
But the biggest point is the neighborhood's established.
No, I understand that. But my question is, if there was, and I don't know what this magical way is, but if there was a way to minimize or maximize safety, if there was a way to do something to make it a less traveled road, would that at all help?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I'm just asking the
I mean,
question.
I kicked around the idea in my head of what if we made Gabriel a one-way street? It just doesn't work, like we have at by the post office.
Oh, yeah,
where it goes from one way to two, but it doesn't work. I mean, if you make it one way, it directs all the traffic out, but then everybody that lives on Gabriel has to drive up, then to Florence, and then back down.
It would have, we talked about this.
Yeah,
I said,
so,
okay, worst case, and this went through, the only way to relieve that safety issue, which we wouldn't get, would be, okay, coming into where mine is that's a one-way.
Brian, I gotta apologize. Where are you?
I live
He's right here.
I'm right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Brian, I didn't know he didn't know.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, the asphalt ends here, and pretty much there's gravel thrown in here, and he has to drive across gravel right away to get
into his street. Okay.
It's not convenient, conducive for him to get into his driveways. It's
It's
been an issue.
Where does Andy live?
Way up
2
there.
houses from me.
Way over.
Andy Marks?
Andy Marks is
Andy
on,
Gator.
Andy Gitter, I know where he lives.
he's on the corner
Andy
right
Marks
there,
is
104.
right here.
Andy's 104. Okay.
104.
Okay. I used to play basketball with Andy, and this came up a long time ago. He and I talked, but I just didn't know where he lived. I knew it was on the street. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, as far as safety, I understand where you're coming from. I'd probably feel the same way, but as Director of Public Works, almost everybody's got a road in front of their house, and I understand your concern, but I just, for the life of me, I don't know why these people would even want to come that way.
It's the new development that we're talking about. If you look,
Oh, these people?
yes, it's going to be a parking.
It's going to be
area.
uphill. And they're not even going to have sidewalks. I know Tom was talking about that a lot, but yeah, there are no sidewalks coming out that way.
I'm not
Yeah.
here to
But
say that there is.
Even so, I live on South Mill. I've got apartments down for me, and life goes on, and the road's in, and
Understood, but it still boils down to, if we step back, what's the reason for this road? What is the value to this road? So, let's step away from the safety end. Let's go back to how this whole thing started in the first place. What is the value to this road and the residents? What are we gaining from this road going through?
Well, then I'll let you talk about the water line, because that's the biggest probably thing.
The water line's different than the road.
Right, no.
We'll focus on Brian's concern.
No. What I was gonna say was that, and from a standpoint of planning, and this is not a great answer, and I'll admit it, because if I was sitting on that side arguing with it, I would argue it. But from the standpoint of planning, this is how the development was planned. I mean, this is how the plat was put together, this is how it was supposed to have been done 17 years ago, for all kinds of different reasons, never got done. So it's kind of like, what is a good analogy? There isn't a good one. You know, it's kind of like if when you build a house and you're gonna put you put your header on your header plate and you're gonna build the deck one day and you just never get around to it. Does it matter that the deck is there or not? No. But it's been planned for.
So let's step to that, because you were missing, and here's the things. We're 17 years later.
Right.
I understand that. Where we have to look at where we're at today and the value of it.
Right.
Where I attest, in the example I used from Dale, on that plot, there was a road. It made no sense to put it in. They abandoned it. I just talked to Dale this morning. They just 2 months ago abandoned a whole bunch more roads. That made no sense. They were on the plots for years and years. It's looking at where we're at today, not 17 years ago. I get it.
No,
17 years ago, it made sense.
No,
We're here we sit today.
I'm not suggesting
What's
that's
the-
a great reason. I'm just telling you.
To have the residents swallow, we're doing this because it was on a plots, and
Okay, no.
it made sense.
No.
That's not a logical
And
reason.
that's a hard argument. I'm not gonna sit and defend it. I'm just telling you and that was just all a part of the housekeeping and just getting done. what was
Understood,
supposed to be
and
done.
we're not arguing that's,
Yeah.
but we're here, and that's why we're testing it, is because it makes no sense. And to have the only argument, or not argument, but the only statement, we're doing this because it was on the plot, that is not, to spend $360,000 because
That's
the
a hard,
road was on the plot.
that's a hard argument. Absolutely. Agree with that 100%. But the water line,
Yeah,
that's a different,
yeah,
That's a
I don't think
different
we should
issue.
get hung up on, you know what I mean? I understand, right? I don't think anybody's really hung up on the water line, are they? The reason I want it is again to offer fresher water, an additional service off of Main, feeding, like I said, right now we bring water in from Mill Street and Spruce. Spruce is built in the 80s. It's already failing.
So one of the questions I had, and I don't want to take over, but, you know, I actually, I had a conversation with Brian Parker also on the water. And from his perspective on the water is, why is the village not taking that on because of the general housekeeping? It's not, the system for us in our neighborhood, it's not failing. It's to improve the system as a village, not specifically for us. So why should that
well,
not
but you're
be-
part of the village.
Understood, but why should that not be taken from the general fund and
Instead of
not be
special
assessed?
assessment.
Or
Instead of
from
this-
the utilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that was part of the initial agreement when the subdivision came in, is that would be completed as part of the subdivision and part of the agreement between the developer and that special assessment. Because when there is an opportunity to do it with the development, that's when we do it. But because it wasn't completed, we didn't have the opportunity to do it then, which would have been done by the developer. You know, just like, for example, like up in Jim Clegg's subdivision, that would be done at the cost of the developer and then basically pushed on to the residents of the subdivision when they buy the lots.
Okay.
That wasn't done in this instance, but that is how it is typically done. It's just that it wasn't done because it was always expected and anticipated that this would go through and then it would be finished at that time.
I do see their point, though. I guess.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
But the other point, and this is probably a bad point, but we have to be careful as a board to set a precedent where we open the door for everybody in every subdivision to come down and say, and regardless of the circumstances, and regardless of the uniqueness of it, we have to be careful. I mean, I've been on the board for like 8 years, and anytime we're making a decision that's one of importance, everybody says, are we setting a bad precedent here? You know, has this been done before? Are we doing something that could later bites in the ass?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know that we are, but it's something that has to be,
And
That's something that has to
Why wasn't
be,
this thought of in 2001 then, when this was voted
we weren't
in?
here, Jeannie.
I understand that. So that board made a bad decision. Why are we continuing with that bad decision?
We're-
Just because we don't want to change what a past board did? Is that what
No.
you're saying?
Not at all. That's what, we're sitting here.
So the
Yeah.
smart answer,
To
if you
try
could go
to
back in
come
time,
up-
would be to tell the developer, okay, here, you have to put us, you have to pay this extra money, so
Oh,
when
yeah,
we
there
get
were
access to
so
this,
many-
you can pay for
so
the
many
water.
different
when we went
mistakes
in.
made in
But
this,
that-
in this whole
yeah,
process.
That's not where we're
You know,
at.
so we get the pile of crap to deal with.
Yeah,
So therefore, I mean, I think that's a great thing. Here we are, and that's why we've been asking, okay. Unfortunately, we're all 17 years down the road.
Right.
And that's why we need to assess this as today, not, okay,
Understood.
these guys made this decision in 2001, but it's not 2001 anymore.
It's 2017.
And
18.
realistically, right, so, I mean,
How long we've been
realistically,
told
yeah.
to-
Well, it could
Yeah, I
have happened
mean,
in 2002, it could have happened in 2003.
Right,
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, to Jeannie's point, or whoever said it, there should have been a fund set up. The developer had dumped the money in so that when this future thing happened, it was taken care of.
Right.
That didn't happen. And-
Which is why we're here right now trying to
Correct,
figure this out.
correct.
yeah.
Because when he sold each and every one of you a lot, he could have just thought about this way ahead of time and said, okay, $3,000 from you on that lot, $3,000 from you.
And
right
who's to
down
say
the
that
line.
that wasn't technically built into his?
Yeah, and that, all that money
Not
went
at
into
that
someone's
point.
pocket.
Yeah.
Again, we're not there, we weren't here,
Correct.
it's
Yeah.
not a.
It
it's
was
not
a
Right, it was a bad,
unthought of,
it was a bad deal and we're stuck with the
Yes.
pile of pool.
Well, and in all, I agree with all of you guys, it's just that we're kind of dwelling on the past and that's not getting us anywhere
Well,
but-
now.
well, no,
I think
and
that's
that's
given us
why,
perspective for now,
Right,
is
yeah.
that when we're looking at it like, this was never supposed to be our expense.
Right.
I mean, as homeowners, this burden was never supposed to fall to us. So, you know, this is part of the reason why this is the pushback. We're like, why should we pay for the water? I mean, not to throw Parker under the bus, but Parker was supposed to pay for the water 17 years ago. I mean, he was the developer who was gonna pay. Now, I don't mean to, you know, because you can't go to Parker and say, pay this money, so I don't mean to throw him under the bus, but that's what was supposed to happen. So when it comes back around to us and says, well, this wasn't paid for 17 years ago, so you guys pay for it.
To the point of
tough.
precedent setting, and I know this is completely different, but dealing in the business world and precedents and unprecedented, we would make decisions on an unprecedented situation. So you make this decision, it's notated, this is not precedent setting because of X, Y, Z. You know, these mistakes were made when this happened, therefore, we can't move forward with this because this is the way it should have been. We're saying this is not a precedent moving forward, you know, and I understand this is different terms, maybe there's legal matters.
Well,
can
yeah, I mean,
argue
and
that,
like,
but
and like
I-
you're saying, Brian, the reality of it is, you know, we can, you know, when you're talking about the street, you know, we can do everything, but you know people are gonna go down there. The reality of it is if we do that, people are gonna say, well, you did it for them. And it's not gonna matter the million reasons why we did it for you. And they might all be great reasons, and they probably all would be good reasons.
But us as, well, I shouldn't say us, you as leaders, that's what we're voting you in for, is to be able to take that on your shoulders because there's a logical reason.
No, and
be able to
that's
move
why,
forward
yeah.
with it.
you know,
Well,
that's-
just for you, where I live on South Mill, there's no curb and gutter. They put the road in, it turns down my street, curb and gutter ends, and it starts back up again. Am I gonna have to pay for that in the future? I mean, it's been 25 years.
Well, you guys are, I shouldn't say you guys, the board's potentially gonna vote in the wheel tax to,
Yeah, but the wheel tax, it shouldn't be, it's gonna be used for maintenance roads, not for funding loans for roads.
And it can't
That's
be used
completely
for-
unacceptable.
For sewer and water, it's
Yeah.
road only legally.
To Carl's point, I think what he's saying is if we came and assessed him to put that in because it's going to benefit him and it's going to be something, you know, there again, we're opening up and again, I'm not saying that that's right.
I'm not
or
saying
wrong,
I
but
shouldn't
we're
be, I
opening-
should be assessed, but I'm just saying. you know,
You'd have argument for your point.
I think it would be commonly accepted that if you buy, you know, if everybody that I know that owns a house like in Greenville where they don't have curb and gutter knows that if they put in curb and gutter right in front of their house, they're gonna have to pay for it.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no question. They're gonna say, I don't want it, and the entire streets. right? But once it goes in on the street, they're not gonna fight that they have to pay for the space in front of their lot line.
Yeah,
I mean,
kinda like
so-
Brian.
I think this is such a
Sorry,
unique situation that I don't think it has ever happened.
What?
It's something that has
And-
never
and
happened.
I'm not-
When do you say,
I'm not saying
okay,
that that's,
you have to pay now to build a road somewhere?
and
You know,
I
it's
agree.
just so unique that's why we are so deadlocked.
I know, but
You know.
that has to, and I bring that up only for something that you guys, you know, it's always, you try to put, you know, you're in the business world. When
Absolutely.
you're talking to people, you always want to put yourself in that guy's shoes. What is it gonna take for him to be able to, you know, get something done? And I just, you know, not being on the board, and I'll be, and guys, it took me a year to figure out what the hell was going on here when I first came, and I thought, you know, I'm in, you know, I'm in the real world, I'm in business, this is, you know, I can do something, my kids are gone, I can help, I can, you know, you know, I mean, it was like, it's just, anyway, it took a while to figure out what the hell was going on, so, things that if I'm saying something that's simplistic, I say it because
Yeah.
I just want you to understand, those are things that we have to consider as a board too. I agree, it's absolutely unique, and we have to come to a conclusion on it, but it's something that we'd have to consider.
Well, yes, that's
So-
why we've got to hash this out
Right,
somehow.
exactly,
So it's been unfinished for 17 years.
right.
So, has anybody ever come back up and said, well, they didn't finish that over there, so we want you guys to take this subdivision without finishing it too?
No, because it was still expected to be finished, so.
Yeah, but I mean.
It's like
nobody even
when
brought
we
it
talk
up.
about dead ends in other parts of the
Yeah, this
town.
is, yeah,
This is not-
If there's a dead end somewhere, it's probably due to the fact that it's fully expected to go through. Now,
Yep, but people bring those up. They say, well, you know, why do you have to do this? And you say, well, these are all expected to go through. I mean, does
Yeah.
anybody come up and say, well, we don't want to do this water here? And we're a developer, we don't want to do this water here? Look at over there, you guys aren't doing it.
not so often, no.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think. that
No, you
there's
do have a
probably
point
room
there,
for
but it-
exception there somewhere.
not saying there's not,
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that's something that has to be considered.
Yeah. I fully understand. And
John's
actually, I
sitting
mean,
there
I've-
like this.
I've argued your point to the residents, and sometimes they're like, well, why do we have to have the water in there anyway? I'm like, and when it came up that they're gonna connect it to the cottage, to the water coming off of the 15
Well,
main,
I'm
like,
just,
well,
actually, that's saving
Yeah.
taxpayers' money by
Well, yeah.
utilizing their infrastructure, upsizing it, just
Yeah.
paying for the upsize.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
I've argued your point saying, well, what happens if the water main over here freezes and breaks or something has to be done? I said, well, we're not connected to any, you know, now they can redirect water into our subdivision, and I've explained to residents, I'm not,
And
Okay.
it's a step back,
See, and
Carl,
if
so you
I
know,
could-
Brian wasn't asserting that he wouldn't, he was saying
No,
this is
no,
gonna be beneficial.
fine. Yeah, I'm
And
not-
that's why he suggested it should come to the general
Yeah,
fund,
that-
because people on Spruce Street, everyone's gonna benefit from
Yeah.
that connection.
yeah.
I had tried to come up with some rationales to try to avoid what they call dead zones or dead ends, and
Okay, so we're not, the point of the water loop isn't one that's
Contested.
contested, it's the monies that are involved with
Yeah.
the water loop. Okay,
Yeah.
and that we
Yeah.
can hash out.
okay.
All right, but let's get back. What are we on now?
I have no
I
idea.
think I've convinced
I'm
everybody
sorry,
that talked
Diane,
about
I
the water, that
apologize.
there's a legitimate reason for the water to go in. The only question was the financing.
So
Yeah.
we're
I
still on,
think
we're
we
still
know-
on prioritization of objectives, and I think, unless you have a comment, I think we could probably just talk about alternatives, and
I think so.
do you guys have anything else that you wanna?
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, we're talking about the road.
We're talking
the water
about,
line,
we've
and the
gone through
alternatives of
everything,
how to
and
achieve
quite
the
honestly,
thing.
some of this was for my benefit, and I apologize for having to rehash some
No,
of
that's
this.
fine. Actually, I'm glad that we can finally sit down and talk about
And
it.
talk,
Yeah.
and just, and again, just to talk about it, and that's, and I appreciate you guys doing that, I really do.
I know,
Why
Are
don't
we-
why don't we talk about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm
I was
sorry.
just gonna say, what, should we talk about the
Sure.
alternatives? I don't know, you know.
Yeah, I think we know some of the alternatives. One being the full road, one being the reduced scope.
And wondering
I
if
looked
we-
at cul-de-sacs as well, and unfortunately, they would consume all of lot one. We would have to, I just don't see that happening. And we would still have a a dead end here and no road in front of Brian's house. Which I'm surprised they even allowed anybody to build there, to be honest. No, nothing against you. I'm just surprised that happened. That
Well,
shouldn't.
I know, I don't know, but looking back through the history, I can understand why it happened.
Yeah.
Because you guys wanted to achieve, not you guys, the village wanted to achieve legal access, and that was Ryerson's way of, he dangled a carrot for the village, give me 2 lots and I'll give you access.
That's
I mean,
exactly
that's
what
exact-
happened.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep,
He's
I
just-
remember it well.
smart man for
Some of the main-
I
You bet.
Yeah, he, you
can't
know.
argue with that.
Yep.
Well, the main concern is traffic flow
Okay,
and safety
Right.
and, I know we've looked at all the alternatives, including them cul-de-sacs, which they just
They're not
don't
gonna work.
physically lay out. If you look at the cul-de-sac over here, what's that road called again?
Florence Court has the
Florence Court.
partial cul-de-sac.
If you lay that offset cul-de-sac, it would consume that whole lot, plus all right away. It's just, they're huge.
Can I ask a question, Carl? So, it has to go do with the cul-de-sac. So, in front of my property where Emily Way and Brookwood merge, right? What is the difference now, hypothetically, if that was vacated and that became a private drive? What is the difference between that L there versus a normal T? Meaning, you're coming
well, normal
off
T, you
Herbert
can-
Drive and you come into Emily Way, there's no big cul-de-sac there. There's just, I mean,
Which road
there's
again?
plenty of room. So,
No, I know
the
here about-
example I'm given, I think it's Herbert Drive. would be
Herbert and
one.
Florence Court.
Herbert, Florence Court, they come and meet Emily Way.
Oh.
There's no big round, it's a T, right?
A T, yeah, a T, I guess,
So it's,
I know where you're coming from. A T, I guess you can pull up and then back up down the other direction and then turn around and go.
But really, the thing is after further looking into it about vacating the road right-of-way, I mean, I think we're kind of splitting hairs on that part, because based on what we discovered with the state plat, we can't vacate roads.
we,
Yeah.
we can't, there's still legal means, Diane.
Well-
That's an accurate statement. I understand you laid this out, but it's still legal to vacate the road.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
a process.
Correct,
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So it's not that we can't do it, it's.
well,
there's
let's
still-
say it's unlikely,
Why is it unlikely?
because it needs the request by all of the property owners
So
along
the
it.
only one that I could see would be Commonwealth. All other property owners right now are for that.
Is it all of them or is it a percentage?
It's all of them.
it's all or nothing.
And
And the other part we were questioning is why is Benchmark on there and why is Guyette on there?
it's because it said, according to the state statute, it's along and abutting. And Benchmark owns the William Court Apartments. That's where that ownership is. And so the corner of that lot touches the part of Michael Ritger that is existing now to the west, but it would be dead-ended.
Depending on where it was vacated to.
So what would you do if so how does that work if, say, like Peter's suggestion was to go through and you put a curve from Gabriel to Michael Richter?
Well, and that's
How does
where,
that work with the?
and that would be feasible, and that's, I have that on here as,
Yeah,
Alternative two.
I'm curious as to how the vacating.
but then
would apply
it
to that,
wouldn't be
because it's-
vacated. It
wouldn't be
would, it would kind of sit in, for lack of a better word, in limbo for, until it could be vacated. It would just be unbuilt and still recorded as road right-of-way, just unbuilt. The remainder from
The remainder of the
Gabriel
Michael Richter.
to Brian's house.
Okay, so that was the point that Brian and I were talking about, was if you did that curve versus doing the whole road and then the T intersection with Gabriel, I mean, how is that not abutting anyway? So, I mean, so if you're gonna kill this piece over here, you know, the Michael Richter section, and still connect Gabriel to there, wouldn't you still need their permission at some point to vacate that?
To vacate, yes, that's why I was saying it would kind of sit in limbo, but the thing, and that's why we asked about the priorities, is because the problem with that one is then the cost of it is up because there's no development on that outlot to contribute to the lowering of the assessment.
Depending on the final assessment. I understand the proposal that you set forth, saying it's 160,000, that we understand, but we still feel that there's a lot of room to go there, especially.
What do you mean, Brian? I'm sorry.
So under proposal number 2, Diane suggested that the quote was 160,000, I believe. I don't have it in front of me.
I don't recall offhand, it was,
Somewhere around there.
and just to clarify, it was a very rough estimate, not a quote.
Yeah,
I just
sure.
want to clarify that.
So, I mean, that's assuming that
Nothing's a quote till we get the
whole
assessment.
project
verification,
was
so
Right.
understood.
priced.
We prefer to go on the high end in the estimate and then come in lower.
So, under that, if we did that, Gabriel adjournment to Michael Richter, that little thing, why could you not vacate the rest of that road? And who becomes, and then at that point, Guyette is no longer on there, and.
I can't remember which one
Benchmark.
Guyette is now, actually.
Guyette-
Must be the one resident. on
Is that
Michael.
that-
Oh, yeah, that must be that. Oh, no, actually, I think, isn't it the one across from me?
No, that's
Who's-
Halverson's.
Oh, okay, that's right, it must be this one,
There's
right.
only one residence on Michael Richter, other than the apartment.
Oh,
And that's why
because.
I don't understand why they're even there.
Because, okay, I recall that now, is there's 2 parts of vacating a road. It's kind of goofy, and because if it wasn't part of a state plat, then it's in accordance with chapter 66. And so this lot, and I didn't include that part in there, chapter 66. This lot over here, according to chapter 66, would need to be part of it, because even though they're not part of the plat, we are ending the road in front of their place.
But that's, okay, but again, that was we weren't necessarily even suggesting that to begin with, to go end the roadway up there.
I guess I'm confused then, because I thought it was, the Parker Heights residents did not like this being connected here and wanted,
They don't.
They don't. But we're here to explore.
oh, okay, well,
But
because
they
that's,
don't like-
but that's why I included this
But-
one, was because that was assuming that this would end here and that would end there.
Yeah, the question was just,
Yeah.
how does that change? Because I didn't understand, so there was a
Gotcha.
question in the statement that you put out as to these people would have to sign off on the vacating, but if we were to do this, weren't we truly vacating the rest of the road anyway? And then they would still have something in front of them, they wouldn't be abutting it anymore, so how would that? So it was just a little
Sure, if this was built from,
clarification on a point that wasn't included in.
from Gabriel to Michael Ritger, if that was built, then Benchmark nor Guyette's would be a part of it, and then it would be just Commonwealth and those that are abutting it.
So to vacate the rest of that road, then it would just be Commonwealth and then the Parkers and
And-
3 other lots.
Right.
Would have to.
Yeah, correct.
And
So under that circumstance, right now, the only one that obviously I've not talked to Commonwealth, they would be the only deterrent to that stipulation. Everyone else is on board with vacating.
Okay.
And actually, all the property owners right now are interested in purchasing the property from Parker. And I've talked to Parker, I mean, it's all, superficial right
No,
now.
absolutely.
Because if they're not interested, if the road goes through,
Sure.
obviously, they're not gonna take on that assessment.
Exactly.
But,
it might be a little hook in it if they have to wait
yeah,
until 2040.
but I'm just projecting out,
Yeah.
if
Well-
this happened, because the only way to do that, you couldn't landlock Parker, so therefore I had to find out
Yep.
if these
Right.
property owners were even interested. They are. Fictitious price was thrown out there, and I think that it probably could happen if that was vacated.
Yeah.
And that would meet the needs for the water. The only thing is, and that's where I was, that's why I came back again asking about the prioritization, is because without the development of that outlot, there are no TID funds, so there's not that chunk of money that was significant to lower that assessment.
I think everybody understands that. From a perspective of the state of the neighborhood, most people think, most of the residents believe that if those property owners buy it, their intent, and I've talked to most of them, and Brian talked to the one I didn't talk to, most of them understand that they're gonna fork over a chunk of change and that their property taxes would go up. But they all, and it's in their best interest because it's right with them, is that it provides a buffer zone between the residential and a multifamily housing, which, I mean, in theory is a really good thing for, you know, for village development, is that you're gonna separate these things and you maintain, because if you don't, then property values are definitely affected. I mean, especially if you split up those lots at 1042. This is offshoot, but I think that their value is extremely limited. They're underwater, so they all require fill, and then they'd be butting right up against across the street from an apartment complex. And the current lots in our neighborhood are, what do they think? Van's only paid 20-some thousand for the lots in our neighborhood right now. So I can't, you know, as an off conversation,
Obviously, another financial reason Brian
Yeah.
doesn't wanna, or Parkers don't
Yeah,
wanna develop.
I mean,
it.
it's in his
Monetarily, it
interest
doesn't
to
make
dump
sense to
them.
him.
Well, and the other catch on that, though, is that it certainly, it is doable. I mean, as far as vacating that part of the road, if you get all of the property owners, like you had said. But the catch on that is that it's led by the residents and a property owner.
Well, and from what I read, if that were to happen, the board has to put a resolution through
Yes.
first. And that-
Right. But I mean, like, applying for it and going through the circuit court and stuff. And for clarification, too, is the reason why that one is different is because it's a state plat. The other areas where the village has vacated road right-of-way, like in the industrial park.
I tried researching that today. Can you explain?
Yep, I know,
a
it's very
state plat and
confusing.
why that was a state, or is a state plat? I don't
When there's
understand that.
land division that creates fewer than 5 parcels, from one parcel down to 4, like the example that Jeannie had given at the last board meeting, that can be done by what's called a certified survey map. And then it just goes through, it's a local decision and local approval process. Anytime, and this is statewide, anytime you create more than, or 5 or more lots in a period of within 5 years, then it has to be a state plat. And then a state plat has to be approved by the local government, the county government, and the state. And they all have equal approving authorities. So in order to undo or change anything from a state plat, it also requires those same approving authorities, which is the village, and then it would go to, like we said, Outagamie County for the circuit court and the state. So that's why
Does that differ between townships and villages?
It's still a state plat no matter what, if there's 5 or more lots created. However, in that memo that I sent, at the bottom of it, it said that a county could vacate a road in a plat in a town, but they can't in a city or village.
Okay.
And I know it is very confusing.
Why do
Yeah.
they differentiate between, I don't want to get into it. I mean, why do they differentiate between a town and a village and a city?
Yeah, because interestingly,
I don't know.
and I understand it, as I called Dale today, I called out Outagamie County. It was just interesting because Dale, not only my road, but then I thought, well, maybe they recently, just 2 months ago, they just did even more roads, and they're not going through that process. They're just having the board votes on it, and it's done. I mean, they still find legal documents, you know, but they're not going through the circuit court.
Right, and in a town, you don't have to, neither for, and we wouldn't have to if it was a CSM, a certified survey map, like up the industrial park was. But because it's a plat, excuse me, then it has to, just like it would be the same way in Horton Hills, Westwind, any of those where it was a plat would have to go through that process. But the towns, they can have the county just supersede it through that exception in the state statute.
So, I have a question, and that's regarding the value, the high-end numbers that were thrown around for stuff is, one of the things that Parker said, in one of the conversations we had kind of struck me, is that he says, well, why don't they just, you know, because he was talking about the water. He says, why don't they just put in a request to, you know, to get a quote to do this in November? He said, because it's a small project, and it's an excavation business, so this is their dead time. right? So they could still get it in before everything freezes. He said you could do it for a lot less money. He said, rather than doing it in the height of the summer and everybody's booked solid everywhere. So, and you're in the business world where, you know, if you're busy, you know, if somebody says, well, can you do this? You throw out a number that's so big that if they do say yes, well, yeah, I guess we're doing it. I do the same thing in my business. But if somebody says,
We've already
Oh, yeah, we already told them we would.
That's not.
okay, so we've already
I don't know why he's-
investigated cost reducing.
Yeah.
I mean, in
We
terms
just
of-
don't have the
There's-
estimate, but we told Brian we would
there
do
is-
that.
There is nothing, I mean, let's just pretend that, you know, that we say, we're gonna do number 2. We're all in agreement, we're gonna do it. We're not gonna start digging tomorrow. I mean, it probably isn't gonna be something, and what I would suggest.
At least
and
a
I
month
also-
for engineering, a month for bidding.
And I would suggest with-
We wouldn't even do any asphalt this
No,
year.
and what I would suggest when we do it, if we could, and this was only my suggestion, to really give it some cost benefit, is to put it out in the fall or late in the fall. I find the best time to bid projects is between Thanksgiving and Christmas, because everybody's trying to get their quotas for the next year. And if you have a good set of plans and you put it out at that time when, as you say, guys are a little slower, they have time to look at it, they're looking at, okay, this is spring work, I want to get this on the books right away, you're going to get good pricing.
Yeah, we told Brian that we would absolutely extend the deadline too, for how long we would give them for the work to be done, so that they could come in at the lowest
Absolutely.
estimate
I'm
possible.
not looking at like having Parker do it.
No, but that would-
No,
I'm
yeah,
just saying,
No,
on a
we've
good
already
faith
looked at
part, you know,
Absolutely.
that type of a process
Absolutely.
should definitely be expressed to the
Absolutely.
residents.
Yeah, no,
Because
no.
nobody knows that happened.
And that's
you know.
absolutely what we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, you want to, because I think when they created this committee, one of the reasons was to educate the residents
Sure.
and stuff. And that's something that nobody knows. So, I mean, right or wrong, it's assumed that, hey, they just throw that, it was just thrown out there and nobody's really trying to save any money, and it's just, this is what it's gonna cost and you guys are gonna pay it.
Quite honestly.
Well, when it
that's-
comes
Yeah, so
to
that's-
estimating, I estimated it full street repair, like let's say we gotta go out here and dig up water main and replace it in the street. That's where those numbers are coming from.
That's where the estimate came from.
And
okay.
what Brian's saying to you, I basically told Brian, so
Yeah,
I
and what-
don't know what's going on there.
Well, no, it just came on a conversation with somebody else and then came to me and I said, well, that's something that, you know, I'm not in the construction business, I don't know that.
What I would-
don't even think of that kind of thing.
What I would suggest, and you and I have had this conversation before, is not to have the damn engineer give the quantities and give the unit prices and give everything so that the guys can come in, you hard bid it. And you get your best number and they take the risk. When we do this shit that we did down at the.
Yeah, I thought this would be cheaper because it's virgin soil, they're not
No, I
working
agree.
in the
Yeah, we
road,
have to-
and,
you have to take all your soil borings and everything.
you look at what we paid for Pine Street versus what Clegg paid, he paid half the cost because it was virgin soil, so.
Right.
But you
Well, and like
can't
we said
bet on
before, is when we give these estimates, I mean, just
no,
like with Industrial Park Road, the actual assessment came in less than what we estimated, because we
And almost-
intentionally do that. We don't want to say it's going to be $3,000 and then have it come in at $3,300.
Well, we don't
You've been
intentionally
here a lot
overestimate
longer.
it
Yeah,
either, it's just,
but I don't
you
think
try
I've
to
ever
match the
been-
going rate.
I understand, I'm just,
I don't think I've ever been in a situation where we thought, and again, it's only been 8 years. I know Jeannie's been with the village a lot longer, but I don't think I've ever been in a situation where Carl said, we think it's gonna come in at 100 and, you know, it came in at 150. You know, it's always
usually
been.
more.
well, I said that because
Yeah.
I knew Carl said he had to leave soon, so I just.
No,
wanted
I don't
get
have to
that
leave,
out. Oh, I thought you said you had.
but
Sorry.
I have come within 4% for the last 5 years on project.
You're pretty
estimate.
close, but you're always low. But you're always
A little high, yeah.
Usually
Because he goes to the highest
Absolutely.
range of it. And, you know, the other part of the assessment too is related, excuse me, is, you know, the board can decide how many years it is to get the payback, you know, the pay on it too, so that it's not all at once, just,
Well,
And they, yeah.
and I'm just gonna ask this question, because I don't know the answer to it. Are there any other things that we can do to alleviate the assessment, other than just smart bidding practices?
Well, there's smart bidding, there's scheduling, you know, giving them time to put it in.
No,
And
absolutely.
just putting the road base in the fall and letting it settle, which I like to do that anyways.
Yeah, because you just pound it down and now you just put the block.
They can, like Jeannie said, if you wanna use one, I can't tell you what
How
funds to
how
use.
impossible is it for the utility to pay a portion?
And that's kind of where I was going.
Yes.
I
mean, do you
mean,
have the
you're the boss, you
No,
tell
no,
me.
as-
Yeah, the
well,
funds.
well, and that's my question.
You know,
I guess,
well, it
would it
depends on
be,
what projects you're doing right now.
Well, no, this is, you
Well, with
know,
that said, it's been 17 years. Can we wait, save the money up for 2 years and run the water?
well, the water, I know we had talked about pushing the water off, but I need to grab it at their building, southernmost building, and bring it out to our property, basically. We can put a valve on there for now, but we need to do that like within the next month or two when they do a utility.
And how much more costly is it gonna be in 2 years?
Yeah, that's,
I-
That's
that's
the
the,
only problem.
well,
Whatever you-
and I just wonder about the kind of being in limbo.
I mean,
But the other
if we're
thing,
gonna do it, why
Sure.
would we delay
Sure.
it and have it be more costly to you residents?
and quite
Or
honestly,
to the
I
water
would-
and
I
sewer
would-
utility if they're gonna pay a portion,
right.
correct?
Yes, but I would invite you to one of our board meetings where we're talking about budget. And the fact that we just, every time in the last, it has been literally 8 years, it's like, okay, here's our budget, here's our levy, this is what we gotta cut.
And I'm glad you brought that up, but that again is one of our biggest arguments of why are we plowing through a road when we have no money? I get
Well,
the water aspect. I think our residents.
What we saw was, we saw it as an opportunity, you know, that's why we did the TID too, so that it wasn't part of the levy. But now we're getting back to the point of, I mean, I think we're getting closer in agreement on reducing the scope of the project to get the water done that needs to be done and just doing this and then working on
What if we,
vacating the rest. I thought we're kind of getting closer on
Yeah,
that.
can I,
I thought we were,
Well, I guess we didn't really.
from sitting here
No,
talking
Didn't make
to,
any.
we haven't made any decisions.
can I throw in another wild card?
Roll anything you
Well,
want.
and just to clarify too, is the other part of it is the push for putting it through was also with the, you know, because I was sent back to the drawing board to reduce that assessment, and that's where it
That's where
got
it
back
took you.
into the development again, is the only way that could be done is if the road was put through, so it's, you know, they're mutually exclusive.
Sure.
And in your, and quite honestly, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, but the reason that we created that TID and tried to incorporate this was to alleviate whatever the assessment would be.
Right, that's why we grabbed that outlot and put it in the TID, because none of the other parts of Parker Heights is in it, but we grabbed that outlot thinking that the development that could occur on there could offset the
The
assessment
initial thought
and the
was
cost
to
of the road.
actually try to alleviate some of this.
And taking advantage of the time, you know, the opportunity of Commonwealth
Yep.
putting in that
Putting in that
water
water
so
we
that
can-
would reduce our cost, so it was,
Yep, nope. So, again,
So let's hear that.
What's the wild card?
what's the wild card?
Wait.
I'm sorry, we got.
Well, I hate to say it, but what if we, in taking Brian's concerns and the neighbors' concerns, what if we just tie this road in with this road and don't tie your subdivision in with them?
oh, so connect, to do the Michael Ritger from Gabriel to
Yeah, it would still kind of
Gabriel
hold out a little bit.
to
'cause
Emily,
you'd
but
wanna
not
do that.
from Gabriel to the Spruce
It would
Street
keep
area.
those people from coming out of here. These people won't, they will literally be going out of their way to utilize this road. I just can't see them doing that. It would still
And then
give
you could get the
$100,000
TID
of
to-
assessment money to the project. We have utility money, we have TID money. It's all virgin soil.
So-
We may get good prices,
That's interesting.
I don't know, I didn't think of it before, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can I-
I think there would be the pushback from the residents on that. I mean, the 4 residents there, obviously, they want the lots behind them. Yeah, that's, you know, you can't do something that's not the same as saying you have to do something. It's 2 different things. So that would not make them happy because they want to buy those properties, but the big pushback from that would be the that would be where it initially started, right? Right or wrong, there is a belief that if that road goes in, there will be access to the development at some point, right or wrong. I mean, so you'd have to find a way for everybody for the people to sign off on that. You'd have to find a way to say there's no way that there's a driveway going in there to those apartments.
Well, that's interesting. I mean,
I don't know how
I
you do
issue
that.
driveway permits. I don't know what we're doing here.
I mean, the developers agreement between the village and Commonwealth, in the developers agreement, it specifically states that it has to be built according to the specs, and then they did the map, and the map is attached to the specs and to the developers agreement, and that was intentional so that all of the specs on the map show access to Main Street only. And so that's why we required the inclusion of their layout of the whole lot to specifically show access only to Main Street.
Yeah.
So, but the only catch is, I guess I would say, is that
Yeah,
I don't
if
know
they come
how
back
that
10 years
works
from now,
on. No, well, they can't, I mean, they'd lose all incentives at that point, so that would be basically good for at least 20 years during the life of the TID. But after that, I don't know if that's
I'm not sure.
undoable.
Can you explain that to me? I'm sorry.
The developers agreement between the village and Commonwealth, because we're giving them the incentives of when they pay their taxes, we
Yeah.
reimburse
Yeah,
90%
yeah,
back.
yeah, okay.
That was so that we could put restrictions and conditions on the development. And the restrictions and conditions that we placed on it was that it was the townhomes and cottages, not apartments, and that the access is on Main Street and not Michael Ritger. So as long as they get those incentives, which is for a period of 20 years, the life of the TID, they cannot access there because that would be in violation of the agreement. But the agreement ends at the end of the incentives.
And then
So-
nobody knows where we'd be at.
Right, we don't know what a board 20 years from now would do.
Right.
That's interesting though. I don't know, short of another agreement with them to not put it, but we already have one for 20 years. I don't
So
know.
I was.
Yeah, well,
I-
it's it's not clear to the residents that that's how it
Yeah.
sits. And that's part of the conditions that, it's again, it goes back to educating the
we're here.
residents. That's not clear.
Right.
The other concern that you'd have to alleviate on there is that it's not, that road wouldn't turn into a parking lot.
So, on to that point, so one of my
How you do that.
questions, since we're talking about the development, and this could potentially alleviate that. So, what I was interested in seeing is a buffer, and specifically, I'm one of those properties that are buttoned up. Now, the apartments off of 15, I forget the name of them, but then you have that subdivision back there.
Kelly Way.
Kelly Way.
Yeah.
I'm
yes.
assuming they were required, I don't know that for sure, but they have that berm and they treat everything. In this development, there is none of that. There's tapered, I saw that, but there's no berms segregating that from the properties that
Yeah,
exist.
I don't
Why-
think we made, I remember when we built, or we didn't build them, but I think that was strictly the developer who put that in. I don't think it was anything the village did.
Yeah, because the-
I'm not 100% sure, but.
Well,
Sure, and I don't know, I'm just, is a question, because there's
There's
that really nice
no,
buffer
and that's-
zone
Yeah.
between the residential.
Having a nice
and
berm
that.
here would be really nice.
Oh, on this side?
Yeah.
Well, they're actually
That's
gonna
what
be,
we're saying.
Require them to do a berm now?
in their front yard, we can't, I mean,
The-
that would be their front yard, we can't. It's downhill, there's a slope, the front yards will come up to the street, and it'll be grass. I just can't see old people.
Although we
No,
did
don't quote me.
require,
Don't put that in the paper. I just can't see old people going down the snow and the grass, in the wet grass to get down to the house.
we did require
I get my
this after
AR
the
people.
fact in the industrial park, if you recall.
Well, we were the developers there,
When that industrial park was built,
yeah.
Spruce Street residents were upset
Yeah.
because the noise from the factory was horrendous.
Yeah.
And then we did change it and put a berm in.
that's because we own the
We
property.
we can't do that to them.
Or it would be a perfect time, I mean, they're gonna have a tremendous amount of dirt.
Well, I think if
It'd
you
be
put a
like
berm on the side of a hill, you're just gonna have a drop off, and
Okay.
that's gonna create more
No, it'd
problems
be a
than it
great, I
solves.
mean, I do that all the time. It's a great place to, instead of have tulling everything off, you create a berm and you just You put grass on it, it's done.
So the other concern, like I said, was how do you deal with that the
Parking?
street doesn't become a parking lot?
I guess I don't understand what you mean, that you think people are gonna park along it and walk to their,
They only have a 10-foot offset from there. So yeah. I
and
would-
like
I would
leave it there
park
overnight, or, I mean,
Isn't the plan say it's a 10-foot offset or something like that?
No, village ordinance is 25 feet. man.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
From
no,
the-
I
from
would
the right,
park there.
from the right of way,
If
so
I
there
lived-
would be
if I lived-
35 feet from
Because
the,
looking
They've
at the
got
plans,
attached
you drive in, you have to
garages.
drive all the way back around.
they've got
It-
garages,
It's
so.
easier to, yeah. I
Yeah,
got a garage too, I
I
don't
saw-
park. I don't always park in it.
There's
But,
no-
I mean, I'm not gonna.
well, and we don't allow overnight parking, I
I'm
guess
not
I'm
gonna
kinda.
park in the next block.
I've lived in apartments before, so, I mean, you have a garage, but.
Well, they're
if you have a
townhomes.
3-bedroom home, you don't
And-
have, how many car garages is it gonna get? Because you got 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms from the plans, right?
All
You
these
have
back
3
ones
bedroom,
are
you don't
3
have,
bedrooms,
you don't have
if I
3,
remember
you
the
don't have
plans
3 car
right.
garages.
So the 2 units
Well,
abutting this.
I'm not
are
saying we
gonna be all
can't,
three
if
bedrooms.
that's what it took to put up no parking, then that, you could petition the board for that.
I was
That's
just
what
gonna
you'd
say,
have to
why
do.
wouldn't, well, I was
There'd
just gonna
have to
ask.
be no
why-
parking.
Let's start at
Just
Brian's
put
house.
no parking.
No parking.
Here.
Thank you for that. Just park
But
down the street.
that's not an immovable object, the no
Yeah,
parking.
yeah, so
If that's
that-
what,
that-
if that's what it takes, then I don't see why.
That's an easy one. for
Exactly.
me.
Well, and
That's what I'm
the,
saying, these are the things that would, if I go back to talk to them, so the whole plan, our plan here was that we would discuss some stuff, come up with some ideas, we'll go back to the residents, see how that floats, and then we can figure out, you know, what we can, well, 'cause
So what would
we
that,
don't have
I mean, I
100%
see
here.
it, what are you proposing on that curve, Carl? I mean,
Down here,
to, yeah.
Yeah, so what would
I
happen?
mean, is
well,
there
I
a
don't know what
grass
happened in my
barrier
road.
then, like, or, you know, what is it?
on this
to-
curve, oh, over here,
Yeah, what,
uh,
A rail?
oh, on this curve?
Yeah.
yeah,
that would be like what's over by Andy Gitter's
No
house,
different
that,
than what we would have
that,
done by you, I just,
what, an elbow or knee you call it, or something like
it would just
that?
be a knee shaped, it would be a curb.
right, I'm just saying, to alleviate people from just driving through.
Jumping, I would.
Yeah.
Oh, through here?
Yeah, so I mean, what is that? I understand it's a curve.
I think there's trees and stuff in there,
Here's, you can see on the air, oops, sorry, on the air photo, here's where Michael Ritger ends there, and there's some,
well, what if we
so it'd
put,
be from here to here. I mean, that's
I
105 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, I mean, so.
on
now
the
you have
end
that jumping-
here, we can set
You
back,
could put some bollards.
we put some 8x8s,
Yeah.
nobody got through there.
Do like a honeysuckle.
And then I could mount the,
That's
Signs,
cheap.
those reflective
those
signs.
reflectors
Little
on there.
bollards, you're driving into the,
I wouldn't want to put that over here because it would be unsightly, but
Yeah.
down here, it's not, doesn't matter so much. Don't break that.
Well, the school.
He
bus-
listens, he's a good guy.
He's ready, he's ready.
He's a
Yeah, I
good
mean,
guy.
I talked to my kids, they said the school bus doesn't go down that road. The school, in fact, I was surprised to
Well,
find
it
out
would
that
be able to-
cul-de-sac.
Well, I'm not gonna say
Yeah.
anything like it would maintain the integrity
Yeah.
of the neighborhood, but doing this would,
Yes, please do not say
Yeah.
that.
yeah, I'm not gonna say it.
And, you know, it would, like I mentioned, and, you know, obviously we don't have any costs on it, but then if, you know, there's, that does leave the option for development that could,
Well,
actually, the initial, the one that reduced the assessment the most, assessed the outlot different from all of the rest of the subdivision. Instead of the per lot one, what we did in that scenario to reduce the cost to the Parker Heights residents was to assess this based on
Frontage.
linear frontage, and we talked to Parker about that. And
Can
that
I
would be,
ask a personal question that affects me since we're here? How am I being assessed?
well, you're actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because you could really get hammered for the agreement that you have.
Yeah, I know that, that's why.
Well, we were gonna assess you at the 2-lot value, because that was 2 lots.
Okay.
But it could have been frontage.
Yeah.
but what we had anticipated in the other scenario, which this would bring this 1,600 down a little bit more, is to assess Parker's on a linear footage. And we had told him about that's what we would do in this scenario, and that would be about $100,000. And his recouping of that would be, you know, potentially through the sale of those lots, 4 lots at $25,000. And then we could also project that there would be increment, because that's where one of the scenarios was run, where we would then assume 4 homes.
You're saying?
Right, it's option 2, minus this. So the, minus this would reduce the cost a little more.
So there would be no utilities other than coming this way? I won't need to go that way.
So that you would have to run sewer though also.
Well-
So is that included in that one?
Yes,
I think we'd almost have to make these lots.
yeah.
Oh, right. I'm
Well,
saying
and that was
under
included in this.
Scenario, you'd
Yeah.
have to do
I'm
both
gonna
water.
ask a really, really stupid question. When Parker was talking to these residents about selling these lots to
He
them-
didn't
He didn't talk to him directly.
Okay.
Well,
This
they,
was-
prior conversations they've had, but
We
but not in this process.
mitigated.
Would you mind letting me know what kind of number they were talking about?
For what?
For the lots?
For the
lots.
entire thing.
Did they give you a tentative price?
I think it's probably okay. I don't.
So-
Well, okay, don't tell me, I don't need to know, let me just
It-
ask this question, and I'm just gonna ask the question, and maybe we can't do this, and maybe it's really dumb. But if we did this, let's just say, okay, we're gonna do this, we assess Parker the $100,000, we reduce everybody's, we get a decent assessment. Parker makes up his $100,000 by selling it to these four people for whatever cost. These four people are never going to develop that.
right.
Yeah, they would be losing. The price that he threw them is significantly lower.
Oh, yeah, way less than 25,000.
Yeah, and then the
That's a good
increment,
idea. Yeah, I
the
hear what
increment
you're
would,
saying.
the increment would not be there to lower the assessment. This figure
there's a tax.
assumes the $100,000 assessment plus TID increment, which that scenario would have minimal TID increment.
Only if they build.
One of the options that we
That's
had
the only way to
told
get to it.
Parker
If
is
it's
if the
developed.
village bought it,
So how
the
does- how
outlot,
does- how do you-
because then we could put conditions on it.
Say that again?
One of the options that we had talked to Parker about is if the village bought the outlot, then the village, because we own it, when somebody buys the lot, we could put conditions on it. So, it has to be a home only this big, at least this big, and it has to be at least a value of $220,000. If the village owns property, or if we give an incentive to builders, then we can put conditions.
Okay.
So how would that?
Well, isn't
How would that benefit everybody?
subdivision, isn't there?
Ours
aren't there
already-
restrictions on our?
There's
There's
Building and.
Covenants,
subdivision?
yes.
Covenants.
I don't think they particularly apply to this.
That's a little, yeah, because of it being an outlot, it's a gray area.
So how does
Okay.
how does that help if we owned it?
Well, I would say one is that we could get on the village's standpoint, we would recoup the money faster because we have more of an incentive to sell those lots and get them developed.
Okay.
On the subdivision point of it, I think that there might be some conditions that they would like to see on it that otherwise the village, as long as they meet the requirements of our zoning, there's no other conditions we could put on it. So one of them, when we ran these scenarios, we put on if the village owned it, we'd say $220,000 assessment for homes. We ran it at $175 if it was just developer owned because they wouldn't have, they wouldn't put the same
So the
conditions on.
assessment
The assessment would be reduced because of the
reduced for them.
tax. the tax
Possibly.
revenue. Yeah.
But that's very speculative on it.
Sure.
Yep,
But that's another.
I follow.
That's another possible money-saving way to reduce the.
Depending on the cost that the village would incur to purchase it, because right now it's assessed at $10,300 because it really doesn't have much value because it's landlocked.
But at minimum, he'd want 25, if that's what we're gonna assess him, right?
Well, the thing is that we wouldn't assess them if the village takes it on.
Oh,
Then he wouldn't be assessed for it. And our cost, we would be eating, the village would be eating the cost of putting the infrastructure in, so it's kind of a gamble.
well, and I had some conversations with, to follow up with that, I had some conversations with the residents and the adjoining lots, just offering, unsolicited advice after Parker's responded with a number, that there was probably some significant room for negotiation on that because if Parker gets assessed $100,000 for that outlot, the likelihood is that he's going to lose money after he sells all four lots. He's going to end up in the losing category. So for him to sell those lots to the adjoining, the adjacent lot owners for anything is a potential win for him. I mean, because they're for the, like I said, they're underwater. They're heavily wooded. They would require a bunch of fill and the excavation.
Oh, literally underwater. I thought you meant
Literally
like, I
underwater.
thought you meant like the,
No, they're low-lying land. They're underwater. If you go back and walk in their yards.
Well, there's a drainage issue there, it does
Yeah.
drain.
So the drains, yeah.
And
But
fill's
they're-
fill, I mean, we're gonna
Yeah.
have fill from here.
So,
we could always
yeah,
do
but I
it.
mean, he's gonna have to do all that to make them
Yeah.
sellable. So he has a $100,000 assessment, and
He's-
then he has to
actually gonna
put some
have-
more
He's not
money
gonna
in
make
it
a lot of money no matter what
and then turn
direction.
around
and there's
sell it.
carrying costs and he's
So-
got to pay the assessment, well,
Help
Yes.
me, and I'm being really stupid here.
So-
So you're suggesting that a possible way to reduce, to make this work is for us to buy it before or after we assess them?
before, this was thrown as an alternative to Brian so that he could get out of it.
Okay. So he would get rid of it, and then we would just,
We take it over.
we'd take it over.
And then we would sell it off to a developer.
And that's how it would, and that's how we would get our monies back. The village would be taking on a risk.
Correct.
We'd be building, we'd get TID money
We'd
that
get-
way.
We'd get TID money that way.
I
And
mean,
we,
that's
and we could
another option.
possibly reduce their assessments, everyone else's assessments in the subdivision.
Right,
That's
and everyone else would be
potentially.
paying less.
Until they're built, it's all semantic.
Right, again, I just gotta stress that it's all speculation and so
no,
forth, but
these
those
are-
are,
So, help
To
me
me,
under,
these are all good
I know he
ideas.
did more research on the TID than I did. But, so, once you determine a final number and you do a projection of the TID, is that locked in, or is it? So,
It-
or if your TID never comes through, the property owners could end up paying more? Is that how it works? Or is it once,
no,
whatever
I-
the assessment
no.
you guys
The
come
TID
in at?
Your assessment would be based on the bids we get. in
Right,
the
that would be
final-
the, that would be
And
the
then your
one, that would be the,
assessment is
that would be the
Yeah, so
one-time
yeah,
thing.
the
Yeah.
projection on the TID,
If
if it
the-
doesn't come to fruition, it doesn't matter to
If the
everyone
TID
else, it's just
You're
the
not-
risk of the
If the
village.
TID
We
starts,
can't
it
all of a
does
sudden
matter.
come back
if the TID
and say,
doesn't make
okay,
its
now you owe
money,
us this.
Okay.
you can actually, help me if I'm wrong with this, but I thought if the TID, if this is a 20-year TID?
yes.
Yeah, if I
27,
remember correctly,
20.
didn't the legislature pass something that if it was, and I forget what the term was, distressed, if the TID is distressed where it's not making its money, you're allowed to
Keep it open.
keep it open for like another 10 years or 5 years? or
Yes,
something?
and,
There are ways
and while
that
the,
you can-
while
there
the
are things that
village,
you can do to try to extend it so that you can still.
Recoup the
you can
but
still
that would
recoup
be,
the funds.
that would be the village, that's,
That'd be
so
us.
we,
You're
right,
that
right,
wouldn't
right,
affect
right.
them.
With you guys.
And-
That's a one-time thing.
And because when we created the TID, we also included the lands to the north of Highway 15, some
so that
lands that
includes-
right now just nothing is happening, but the
Right.
idea was that maybe once 15 was bypassed, maybe we'd have
That
some
would-
activity there.
right.
And that could help the
That
village
would help
out
the
to
bill-
lessen
where
our
we
risk.
would- Where we would actually get the development back here would lessen our costs.
Could lessen our
Or it would make the TID
underwater.
It would make the TID, yeah.
Well,
it would bring
not
the TID
figuratively, not
figuratively,
literally.
The TID wouldn't be underwater if we could do some of those things.
Correct.
Okay,
That's why we included additional lands as well,
for development.
as possible. It's just, right now, there's just
Nothing
no,
there until we get 15.
yeah, it's around the cemetery and the toy factory.
So,
So stepping back to, because one of the questions, big concern, is a Commonwealth. Now, just so I follow, it was, I know Diane, you said for 20 years they're locked in, but there also was a conversation that you might go back to the Commonwealth and suggest some, or what, did I mishear that?
what Jeannie was, I think what Jeannie was suggesting was, could we go, we have a development agreement with them, and I don't think there are any restrictions that the development agreement would make them put some sort of a berm that would be a protective something here that you were suggesting, Brian, if we could do that. We don't, the development agreement is already set and agreed to. There's nothing that says we can go back and make them do that. I think that's what you're talking
Right,
about.
and, we talked about having that access.
Well, and the
Concern. I know Diane said we're locked in for 20 years, and I thought there was a suggestion potentially of, maybe asking to put some verbiage in there. But maybe
well,
Maybe
no,
we can do a
that
resolution.
was thrown around. It's just that I don't think we have any ability to make that a permanent thing.
Well, we can. at the end of the
It's
day,
in place for 20 years for the length of the TID, but
Can we ask them to do it? We certainly could, they could just go, you know,
I don't-
we could ask them.
I don't think we can legally
They're
have
in the business to make
a,
money. If they're not putting it now, I don't think they're gonna be putting it.
I think it's, yeah, and just the layout of the property, I think it's highly unlikely. And actually, they, once we said that on Main Street, they jumped at that.
So once the,
But-
make sure I understand. And I know we're circling, we're going round and round here, but I'm just wanna be very.
We're making progress though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just
Some of
laughing
the
at
stuff
John. John was
is
going
that-
like this.
Yeah, I'll keep writing the same thing over and over again. Okay, so, the agreement with the Commonwealth says that they have to stick with the plans that have been submitted, or they could potentially, or if they don't, then do they lose all of the incentive? Is that how that works?
If memory serves me right, and I'm trying, I gotta think of how that was worded, is that, a couple of things is if either party breaks a term of the agreement, then they have the right to try to cure it, to fix the problem that they broke the agreement. During the terms of, let's say they break the agreement, then they don't get any of the money at that point. Moving forward, because the money is, you give it to, they give it to us and then we give some back. So they would have to give it to us and then we wouldn't give it back until they fixed the issue. If they didn't fix the issue, then it would be a court thing where we would take them to court to get the back money, or they would fix the issue.
It would not be in their best interest. Their performance is
no.
absolutely built on us giving them money, otherwise this thing's not gonna work. So if they would go into, if they would go against the agreement,
I just want to be very, very specific on this. So if they were to modify the agreement without it being accepted, they potentially stand to lose about a little over $25,000 a year in
Correct.
refunded tax.
Correct.
Okay, so, and adding an access to that road would be a modification.
Correct.
Okay. Could that modification still be done if they came to ask the board and then the board said yes, without losing the $25,000?
Technically, they could come to the board and ask for a modification of the developer's agreement.
And if the board agreed to it, then they could put an access onto that road. Okay, so there's where the point comes in, where how do we guarantee that this can't happen?
I don't think we can, there's just not a way to do that. I use the ridiculous analogy of a marriage, you promise to forever and then you get divorced.
well, I mean, and even if we could do something like make a resolution or make some sort of an ordinance, which we could, any other board could come in here
Yeah.
and go, we're gonna rescind that ordinance.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
So I mean, if that's what it would
Yeah,
take to get us done.
I understand legislative binding.
Well,
know
an
we as a
example,
board
Yeah.
would be opposed to that, but it's again, her analogy, it's like a marriage, you certainly hope it lasts forever.
You can do a resolution. It might only be symbolic,
But I would,
and
like
you
I
can
said,
put it in the file.
Absolutely.
And hopefully,
Just like on their deed, it's there.
well, an example of, it just,
So when they come to us, we say, we've got this resolution saying, no, you
well,
can't do this.
and really that gets back to what Kelly was saying before about precedent. So, because another board could undo this board's decisions, but
But I
an
mean-
example of that one actually just happened at the, 2 board meetings ago with Wild Wind. I get all my winds mixed up.
Wild Wind.
Okay, Wild Wind, is that we had a developer's agreement, and that's still under construction. We've had 2 modifications from it at the request of the developer.
but they were pretty,
Right, but my point is that
we can
it,
certainly do that.
yeah.
But I
So we-
guess from the
There's
standpoint.
no poison pill somebody can put somewhere that says,
No,
this is gonna, yeah.
but again, I would absolutely suggest that if that's what it would take to ease people's minds, I think this board would be, at least I would be willing to certainly
I would
do
have to
something
say
like that.
especially if that option were to go through, it would be absolute now, because obviously the easiest time to adjust something is during construction. They're gonna
Right.
start constructing right
Absolutely,
now.
yeah.
And as soon as, oh, hey, we are gonna plow this road through here, hey. can
You're
you
not gonna
this?
do it, yeah. And
Yeah.
we could make a resolution that says, we already talked about it, and no, don't even think about it. So,
Like I said,
from that standpoint, yeah, There would, I know there would, I know it would be symbolism, but it would be
Is there,
at least something.
Well,
is there any, like parliamentary trick that you can do that would force, say, a unanimous vote by the board, to be able to do something like that, or?
To bind it, no.
I think everything's
That's-
majority.
Yeah.
That's just the way
I
it is.
I know what
But
you're
just
saying. but-
exploring, I mean, I'm
Right.
just trying
No,
to see if
there's
there's something
something
that wasn't
that
thought of, and,
that could-
because
that
we're,
could
I
etch
think
it
we're
in
focusing
stone
on
and not
financial,
paper.
how do we do this, is there some trick somewhere that we can, because the whole idea is, I mean, I think everybody gets this, is to put some sort of a poison pill in here that says, that we can go back and say, look, these people, this group over here that you don't want driving through the neighborhood can't get in here.
Right.
You know,
And at
instead
this
of
point,
saying,
there's a
this,
20-year
right
point.
now, they can't for 20 years
Right.
unless they go to the board and then the board says they can. And
But-
at some point, a majority vote
Let
could
me-
potentially do that.
Let me ask this. We're going through, this has all been platted, and this is a state plat. And what we were talking about before was, there was a lot of steps to vacate this road. Would the same hold true to put a road in here?
To put a, well, that's,
That'd
we're
be
talking a
private.
driveway
That'd be a
Drive.
into
$50.
private property,
Yeah.
and this is not platted. This is a survey, that's a plat.
$50 in a case of beer, and they got a
Well,
driveway.
a new.
Well,
So,
but then they lose,
Right.
they lose a
But I
huge
guess my
incentive
question
of
is-
money.
My question
Yeah.
is there something to do now that would, and I don't know, I'm
Well-
just asking the dumb
And-
question, to make it.
And actually, if they lose the incentive from the village of the financial incentive, then they also lose their tax credits from the state. They can't get, that's
That's
dependent,
another big deal.
and that's huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
As long as
it's a
that,
20-year pill.
yeah, it's,
As long as the board
So what does it take for them
doesn't
to,
amend the agreement.
to lose it though? Okay, because, so say they say the hell with it, the hell with you guys, we're gonna put a driveway in. What are you gonna do? I mean, are you gonna, does it have to come back to the board and then get board
Frankly, I'm
down
not sure where they
to
would-
go back to them to say, we're gonna take this away because we feel you violated
No.
the agreement? Or
no,
is it
it's
just-
pure legal, it's written into the agreement that then they do not get the money.
Okay,
And then there's the legal part of it, of the process to take them to court and so forth. But no, that doesn't require board action,
Okay.
because that's in the agreement.
Is there a way?
just trying to understand the
There's
process.
not a way to prevent them from doing it, is there? If you just wanted all of a sudden cut a road in there,
The money, I mean, and then they'd be in violation of our, they'd have to get a permit, a driveway permit, and
I
they'd
still
be doing it
like-
without a permit, and then they would have violated our ordinances, so then we would give them daily citations for violation of ordinances, and
There's-
they'd
there's-
lose their
there's-
money.
yeah, there's all
They
kinds
would, that unit would go under. They're just, their profit margin, that would just,
They'd be gone.
yeah,
Okay.
so. But I think to address their concern, two things we could do would be address the parking ordinance.
Yep.
Yes,
Simple enough. And a driveway resolution.
yes.
And just put it in the file with all the other agreements.
Because in how many years when you're gone, there's a new public works director, he doesn't know what kind of agreement we have. So
No.
we need something in writing to say,
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
easy enough.
a resolution.
Yeah,
or-
it's
or
a
whatever we can
village's
do.
wish that no driveway, so, we can do whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Is it possible, Diane?
I'm sorry, for which part? To do a resolution stating the board's wishes and go on record as saying that this board does not want future agreements to allow for a driveway access. Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's
Okay.
easy.
We can do I mean,
I
we could
understand.
do a resolution saying, declaring Mickey Mouse as our president. I mean, I don't mean that sarcastically, I'm just saying, we can do a resolution stating a village opinion on anything. We can't with ordinances,
Because someday you
but
might
certainly
not be here.
resolutions.
Carl may not be here, we won't be here.
It's important.
Somebody's gotta have something
Certainly.
in writing
You can't bind the
to
future
refer back
board.
to.
But-
Right,
but
no,
it's
we
important
can't.
to be in writing.
Correct.
Yes, we need something to refer back to.
But at least it'll be there that
Yes.
says, hey,
And we
this was
understand.
the agreement, and this is why it was.
It can be changed, but
And we can
at least
attach
it's
all
there
these
to
minutes.
begin with.
Okay, one thing that I'm getting out of this before we move on is that I'm hearing a motion right now that regardless of what happens here on what alternative this group decides to make a recommendation to move forward, there is a motion recommending that the board adopt a resolution going on record as saying that no driveway access to Michael Ritger.
I'm gonna ask one question for that. If we don't put this road in, is it still important that we do that?
I would say
They could always
yes,
come
it
in off
is,
the end.
because it could come out on this corner, and if that road is not vacated.
Okay,
This
so
is on
as the
the
chair, I
likely place.
can't make that motion, can I?
Yes, you can.
I don't know. Okay, I'll make that motion.
Right, John? You're on city council. The chair of a committee can make a motion.
Okay. Then I'll make that motion.
And you guys are members of the committees, so one of you guys can second it.
And then we'll vote on it.
So I'm going to put directing staff to draft a resolution of village board's approval, or village board opposition. I'll word it different, to Michael Ritger access. Okay.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Okay, it was motion by you, second by you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Opposed?
Wait a minute, sorry.
The ayes
I
have it.
forgot I was on that committee.
All right.
Diane.
Sorry.
So, okay, there's one part.
So the no parking is, well,
Well, I think.
it means nothing right now until we,
I think, yeah, I think I think the no parking would be
It's-
an absolute
It-
condition
so-
of what.
So
they-
I'll play devil's advocate. If I was a future owner of one of those lots,
I would be pissed.
I would be
can't park in front
pissed.
of my
There's no
house.
parking. I can't park in front of my.
well, I wouldn't wanna do it
So-
on both sides, but definitely wanna do it on the
You do
north
it
side.
on
You just do it on
that
the
Okay.
side.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No parking north side?
Well, I mean, our covenant doesn't allow us to park. You can't park long-term on the streets.
Well, let's say when you got
Nobody does park overnight.
Well, this one, I think, this is even on the air photo and it's still there.
Very rarely.
this
I don't think
guy,
anybody ever parks it overnight. I'm just trying to think, in our normal everyday
You
life,
could-
there's
I mean,
cars
you could-
parked,
you could-
visiting
Well, sure, but you
people,
could, you could say no parking, but I think you could probably say no overnight parking, couldn't you? I mean, if they're gonna have a driveway,
I have trouble getting that enforced right now. Don't worry.
I'm not talking, enforcement is.
If you don't want it
one
written
thing.
down, don't say it.
Requiring the resolution, or doing the ordinance is one thing, enforcement is another. We're not talking about enforcing, we're just talking about, is it one, practical, and two, we could.
The overnight's not practical. The no parking on the north side is very impractical.
Okay,
Yeah. I would say one side, no parking.
okay.
And let's say you guys know somebody moves in here, he's a good friend, he parks out here for half an hour if it's boat.
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody's gonna make a big deal
Yeah,
out
I
of
know,
it.
like-
But if there gets to be a chronic issues with people
then we have
parking,
something to stand on. Gotcha.
But now I'm gonna play the devil's advocate, because now this is the planner in me, is that whenever, typically whenever you make any kind of, restriction, there has to be, some kind of basis on it, safety, so forth. Can you just identify an area of street that you don't want parking on, just,
Just because?
yes? Just because, I know in planning and zoning world is when, if you make a regulation,
longest-
you have to
yeah.
have some justification
The
for it that is
longest
based
stretch.
on safety or some kind of science or math or, what have you, rather than just,
Is
we
the
don't like
reason-
it.
Can we use the reason that we're actually doing it? Because we want the parking from the Commonwealth to stay on the Commonwealth. They've been given road access, they have no access there, we don't want, we don't, it's a safety issue because we don't want people walking 35 feet on no sidewalks to their apartments. We want them to use the access that has been built in and given to them on that development.
I understand the safety part, we do it by the school, we don't allow parking on Nash Street here all along.
Okay.
But that's safety, but this would, as part of a negotiation, or whatever, can we do it?
And I don't know, like I said, I was kind of playing the
What do you
devil's
think, Jeff?
advocate. If somebody were to challenge it, what would we say?
I think it was part of a negotiation.
Yeah. It was,
That would be our justification.
the reason for it was because we didn't want people from Commonwealth to use it as a subsidiary to parking anything. And it was a
Concern is
it was
for
a
overflow
concern for all
parking.
the other people in Parker Heights. I mean, to me, that's explainable. But I don't know the legalities of doing something like that. I'd have to, we have to kind of maybe talk to Bob about that.
The width of the street is a factor. And
What's that, John?
The width of the street
Yeah,
is
Yeah.
a factor.
Okay,
It's
Yeah.
pretty easy to close off one side of the street.
okay.
because for safety reasons, when you got cars
Right.
blocking, you can't get an emergency vehicle.
Okay.
I was kind of thinking that, because the street I
Right.
used to live on in Menasha only had parking on one side of the street.
What,
Yeah, that is
Because of the
common.
width of the street.
can we?
But is
can
there a
we-
restriction that says you
can we
have to do
narrow
the
that
streets?
I'm not
Stay.
sure that would save or really do anything. I think if we
Yeah.
just base it on negotiation.
Or if you could cut 2 feet off of the the width of the street, you could say, well, it's not safe to park on both sides of the street.
Right.
We can certainly do that.
I mean, I don't know what the regulations are
I
for
mean,
the city streets.
it's gonna
for
save a little bit of money,
construction.
but that would be a way to do it too.
Actually, I've got it right here.
Oh, you do? Okay.
That's what I would-
So that would be a secondary local. So the right-of-way has to be a minimum of 60 feet and the actual roadway width a minimum of 26?
Yeah, which.
Because that would be
theirs is
considered
thir-
secondary local, correct?
Yeah, theirs is currently 32 in your subdivision, if I recall correctly.
Well, let's put it this way. We'll find a way
To make it no.
to make it no parking. Let's not, I mean,
Either
let's
through
agree on
negotiation
the
or
fact
width.
that-
On one
Let's
side.
not get into the minutia, but we'll just
Yeah.
agree to make it no parking.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think it's fair to those future residents to not allow.
And
Right.
that would be an ordinance versus a resolution, so then that takes more work to reverse.
Okay.
So I'm hearing that we've got the options that we have listed on here, and then option number 6 is to construct Michael Ritger from Gabriel to Emily
I guess
to
we-
build that and the infrastructure, and Michael Ritger to Gabriel, this area would be vacated.
All right, now the tough question.
How does it, we have the same, would it be easy to vacate
I think that would be easier to vacate this than it would be
the rest
to,
of it? Okay.
because it,
All you need are the people there that are adjacent.
Well, do
to
you
it.
need to vacate or you just keep it as green space?
I don't really want to take care of that for the next 100 years. Public Works doesn't. I'd say
I
we
mean, if you-
vacate it.
Vacating it then makes it,
Give it to
makes at
Parker.
least
Give
the
it-
option of
'Cause
that
he owns
going
that lot.
through
Yeah.
go away.
It'd make that lot viable, really viable,
Thank
really.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh, that,
We
yeah.
need to be.
Yeah, because it would be on the whole curve. then.
Right, so if you
That whole
vacate.
Aren't you
Yeah.
able,
Yeah.
now, maybe that's different terminology, but you guys were originally talking about deeding stuff.
that was,
Do you, because the village owns that, right? Can you just deed that
Or we would
to-
still have to vacate
to
it then,
lot
and I think
one?
we would deed it.
deed is the second part. Vacating is saying it's no longer a public road. Deeding is giving it to somebody else. So there are 2 steps. The first one would be vacate, then the next one,
Yeah.
transferring the
Just give it
property
to
ownership.
somebody.
Yeah, the village, and if you end up with the idea of purchasing that lot, you could potentially sweeten the deal for Parker by giving him that other piece over there
Sure,
and getting him to reduce, because that's actually that would actually be a buildable lot.
right, now you
Yeah,
gotta,
Yeah.
now it becomes a.
Yeah, and then you don't have to take care of it.
Nope.
Yeah,
And then it's
it's kind of
and then
a-
it's another buffer between the other apartments.
it'd be a
the
great
other
space
apartment
for a
buildings.
garage, and then they could plant trees, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting into minutia now, Carl.
I'm just saying that's
no.
if you decide to do that, that might be a
Yeah,
nice
okay.
little.
yes, sir.
If we did this, I would recommend it be called Brookwood and not Michael Ricker.
Oh, yeah.
You would what?
They call it Brookwood
Stay
and not Michael
Brookwood, not
Ricker.
Michael Ricker.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like a-
So I,
And Brian
it's
doesn't
an
change
offbeat
it.
question, but that's fine. I don't like Michael Richter anyways, but, the numbering, how does that go? I only ask because I've got this 801 in my thing.
I mean, I'd have to look at the addressing grid. It's actually, addressing is regulated by Outagamie County.
Yeah.
I don't know the
So does it
numbers
just continue
offhand.
The
down
numbers
road?
are.
Yeah,
They'd probably
the-
take
by the
over from
clerk
here.
treasurer.
Would
Yeah,
either be-
whatever.
No,
Chip
she assigns
says, I
them.
mean-
They're
Yeah.
regulated by the ordinance, Outagamie County ordinance.
Gotcha.
So, the grid, I'm sure, is the same as whatever is in here, like what's, this one looks like 204.
Yeah.
That's.
Oh, but that's off the court.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In all likelihood, whatever this is, this will be only,
Brookwood, I butt up to the last Brookwood house.
Do you know what theirs is?
I don't remember.
I know,
what
we're getting
Chip's
off base.
is. It
Yeah.
doesn't-
Yeah.
it's-
It would take over, either down or up.
Just extend
I'm thinking it would go up,
Right,
or no, it might go down,
you
because
think so?
Brookwood comes off from the south.
it doesn't matter.
It does,
But,
it does in some places.
no, I mean, for purposes of this
Tonight, it
discussion,
doesn't.
I mean, we'd have to look at the Outagamie County ordinance and
Odds
assign
are you would
numbers.
change, and I don't think that would be a bad thing.
No.
Uh,
No matter what decision, I think I end up changing regardless.
Would it be safe to run some numbers?
Unless the whole thing goes through.
Well, I think the next step for this is to, for us to go back to the other residents and see what kind of a response we can get to this before you burn any cash trying to go through numbers.
I mean, I can do that myself.
Well, if you can
but,
do that, okay,
yeah.
well, then I would say, yeah, I mean, that would definitely help if you start talking about how much, because, get back to the very first point
Yep.
here, the money, I mean, where I live, I mean, I live 2 houses from Gitter, this is way away from me, this-
Absolutely.
you know, so for me, the money is more of a concern, but for some of them, the traffic is more of a concern, so, yeah, so the numbers would help, the traffic, definitely, I see that as a good compromise.
I think truly the presentation of what our ultimate viable options are that we could agree on. Not just us, because there's, okay, in a perfect world, we do nothing, it costs nobody anything, but that doesn't solve the issues that you guys are presenting. So it's about presenting the viable options that we came to, and one, so there's cost about the water line. So if we did nothing and we vacated, one of the solutions was, you know, I think hooking that one. That was a viable potential.
Let me ask you this, Brian. Would it help, in your opinion, and I'm gonna make an assumption here. Would it help, in your opinion, assuming that we think this is a good idea as a group, would it help, as your opinion, if we presented this as a group?
How would you propose it?
I don't know, I'm just, instead of you guys going back and talking to them, would it, and I'm not suggesting that I wanna take another night out to do this again.
Yeah.
But if that's what it takes
Okay.
to
Educate.
help educate and to help, the word sell comes to mind, but we're not selling, but
Yeah.
to educate and to get buy-in from everybody, if it would help as a group for us to do that, I would absolutely say, let's do that. But you guys, you know your
So
guys.
do like an information.
I think so too, and then I
Yeah.
think we should I mean, basically, we're down to, we got 3 maps. We're talking about the whole thing, from here to here and vacate, and from here to there and vacate.
And
I-
just sit down with everybody again and say, okay, you know, you go back and at least tell them where we're at and understand what we're doing, and we're trying to come to the best resolution here, and here's what we're gonna do, and here's what we think it is, and here are our options, and just have an informational meeting for everybody.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
I think you're gonna get,
We're not gonna,
Yeah,
we
it's
are,
gonna be a
at the
varied
end of the
response,
day,
but yeah.
we are not, the group is not going to go out a happy camper and
Kumbaya,
everybody's
yeah.
going cool, but yeah,
Yeah.
there are going to be people that are not going to be happy with it, but we have to get to a point where the majority, at least,
yes.
are
And
okay with
I
it.
think we've had discussions, like I said, in a perfect world, nothing happens.
Right.
But I think we know that isn't a solution, that's not a viable solution. We know that XYZ at minimum has to be done.
Right.
So that's partly why we're trying to, so we're.
Well, I think we made progress because you guys accept and realize that's not viable, and I think as a board, I know as staff, I think we see that the whole thing isn't going to be built,
Right.
but we certainly have 2 intermediates that meet the village needs,
You know,
and
we're still responsible for decisions made 20 years ago as staff.
Yeah.
So don't take it, we're not looking, yeah, don't take it personally. If the board voted on something 20 years ago, whether it's 20 years ago or 2 days ago, we're still
responsible.
Yeah.
And
So
again, that's.
it's
where
not
I
always
was going with-
popular, but we're still.
with the housekeeping thing before. But what do you need from us right now? What can we provide to you right now to get this going, and should we talk about another date when we sit down and talk with the rest of the group, or is there some legwork that has to be done? Help me out here.
Well, I guess what I was just thinking first out is as some, maybe we could have a public informational meeting prior to the next board meeting, obviously not tomorrow night, but 2 weeks from tomorrow. No.
So let me ask this, so, okay, hypothetically, this is what we're leaning towards, whatever, and it's gonna cost X amount of dollars, okay? Now, one of the discussions way earlier on was that there was a potential talk or vote of how many years can be strung out.
Yes.
What, because that affects numbers, right? I mean, to the end of the
some people's mind,
to
yes.
some people's mind, I mean, any money out of my pocket is gonna hurt, right?
Let's say,
Diane,
let's
when
say
we-
we got it down to 1,600 per lot.
I think we can, is there a limit on how many years we can make it, or is it?
Usually 3 to 5.
I was
I
gonna
know
say
that's
that.
what we've always talked about,
Usually.
that when we, at the board meeting, I remember it's normally 3 to 5. Is there, can it be 10? It can't.
We just passed that in London, because people are gonna have a huge expense, because we're gonna dig up all the lead water lines, we're talking
So, I mean, if,
190 front yards.
I guess to answer your question,
But you wouldn't want
does
to
it
stretch out
matter to
$200,
us?
let's say $200 payment.
It,
for 10.
well,
Do we
Or do
care?
you?
yes and no. I'm kind of thinking this here, because the thing is we do, typically when we do that, there is interest, so it's charged in interest. The village would be fronting the money longer, but I don't see it as, I think it would be more of a concern if it was a huge amount, but it's,
But if it.
I don't see it as a
To me,
problem.
if it alleviates some of the concern, because, if we say you can pay it off in 1 to 10, well, you might want to do it in 5. The next person, like you said,
Right.
that doesn't have the money, wants to do it in 10. I think if that's what you're asking, I think we can make that work.
It's just another one of those
Yep.
data points
No,
to help
and-
people
and again,
understand.
Brian,
Where it is,
I truly think that we, as a board, are of the mindset to do whatever we can that is reasonable to help this.
And that happens at the time when the final numbers come in and everything, the vote for the assessment, the vote from the board designates the time period.
So if we.
Of
if
up
our
to
concerns
7
are-
years or whatever
If our
have you.
concerns, we could certainly make it whatever the concern would be, other than, than 100 or something
Right.
stupid.
So one of the things to answer your question is, what can you do? I think one of the things that you can do, as earlier we discussed, potentially the cost for the water, right? I think that anything that the village can do to reduce the cost, even as much as putting in a chunk of it, right? And then communicating that, right? So communicating what the village can do, how much of an impact it's gonna have, what the village has done and is gonna continue to do to try to minimize the cost, would be extremely useful in any informational meeting.
Okay, well, so what I would even say, Jim, is we go to all of the points that we brought up before, I think would be things that we would absolutely want to bring up. Bidding it at a time when we know
Yes.
we're gonna get the best bids. Understanding that we wanna do it sooner than later because of cost escalations and everything else. We wanna do it within the next year, but at the right time in the next year so that we're getting the best cost. Finding, what else did we say? The possibility of purchasing
Did
this
I-
to knock this down.
did
But
I
I think if
hear-
we bring up all those points as an informational thing and get that to you before we'd have the informational meeting with your group, I think if we could come up with that, Carl, a list and some costs and maybe this, and again, you guys are just sitting in your X's looking for stuff to do. But if we could come up with some of that stuff and just run that by this group to make sure that that is what will play well with
Yeah.
the people, I think that would, is that where you're going? I think,
Yes,
with this?
I think the more
So I
that
think
the
there is a lack
board
of
can
information.
represent to the residents,
Yes.
that, look, we're doing this to try to save you money.
Yeah.
We're doing this to try to save you money. We're getting some money from here to
Yeah.
do this. Even the TID is, the more understanding there is of how much money is going into this, and that this was planned as a cost savings, and this is how much money, this is what we did. We planned this as a cost, because you have to walk people by the hand through some of this, because
You bet.
it's really difficult. Is to say, look, that we want to minimize the cost, so we did this process, and this is going to get us this much money, right? That's where we started. Now we're gonna do this with the water, and this is what we thought about for this. And we examined, maybe even purchasing the lots and then having a higher, a higher value on them to add to some of the
Yep.
savings that we could do. And I think it goes a long way to helping people accept and stomach that somebody's actually looking out for.
They want to see that we're actually doing something instead of, as I heard in a lot of these emails and everything, we're doing it because we can.
Yes, exactly.
And that's really, it boils down, when this all was laid out, what people heard, I'm not saying that's what was trying to be presented, but what people heard was, we're just shoving it because we can.
Yeah.
There was no legitimate reasonings,
Right.
and that's what people were looking for.
Sure, absolutely.
Legitimate reasons, and I know it came out later with, and we haven't heard enough of it, so maybe Carl can expand on it. By doing this with the water, what it's gonna do for
Right.
everyone, even in our
And he's got a
direct
whole-
area. We didn't hear that, it was starting to come out later on.
Right, sure.
But that's the things that people heard, and that's why it went really south in a big hurry.
Right.
Yeah, so, I don't know that this is even a cost savings, but like, if you're doing the excavation for the water, right, is there a cost savings to doing the road while you're doing that? Versus you do the water this year and you do the road 3 years down the road.
Well, we
I
would
mean,
do the road excavation
Yes,
and the water, or the utilities at
Yeah,
the same
at the same
time.
time.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I know,
And
that's
then
what I mean,
let
yeah.
them settle and
Yeah.
set.
There's a cost
And,
savings.
Yes, so this is the cost savings for saying, okay, this is the reason for saying, we have to do the water because of the reasons you can lay out, and we can save some, we can reduce the cost by not doing the road later, because of increased costs, and because we're already doing some construction here, so this
I guess I
is
didn't
put
think
together
that
as an
was-
entire project.
I do that for the taxpayers with everything.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah, I know, behind the scenes you're
Behind
doing
the
that,
scenes,
but this
Carl
is.
does that stuff all the
yeah,
time. But
yeah.
I think your point is well taken, Jim.
Yeah.
Tell them that we're going to do this, and the reason that we're doing it is because you're reducing mobilization. You're not doing
Yes.
something, you're not digging it up twice, you're not disturbing it a
Yes.
second time. It's
Because then
virgin
it comes
soil.
down- then
It's now,
that
it's
helps
one
to-
guy coming in, and he's doing both things at the same time. That's absolutely.
I think that helps to minimize the question of why do we have to do the road now?
Okay, yep,
Right?
got it.
We have to do the road now because this is gonna save money for in the future.
Yep.
It's gonna cost more, could potentially cost more down the road.
Exactly.
We're gonna do the excavation because of the water
Yep.
right now, and that's gonna reduce the cost for this.
Okay.
And we've got the TID that has gone through, so that is potentially laid out there for cost savings now. And instead of we're gonna do it now because.
Why don't you
with
come up with a
no
list
rationale behind it to walk people through it.
and send it to me, and then I'll add whatever I can think of just from
Yeah,
the
just
construction background, and just, then you and I can come up with that list of stuff.
suggestion too, this is kind of a question and maybe a statement, that adding 4 lots, that tax base, what does that potential give the village? I mean, is there a potential down the road where taxes could decrease because we have, I don't know, you know where I'm
Yeah,
getting
yes,
at? You
and
know what I'm
actually,
saying?
after the TID is closed, then that, you know, then whenever a TID gets closed, see, all of the there's a base value when a TID is created. Everything that comes in above that base value goes straight towards projects, and that's how anything that comes in would be able to go straight towards the Michael Ritger project. After the TID closes, all of that goes back into the general levy. So then the school district benefits, the Fox Valley Tech benefits. So technically, 20 years from now, all of the governing bodies that tax in the village would get whatever that portion is of that property. So let's say $4,000 on a home. 20 years from
It's an
now,
investment,
the village would get that
basically.
chunk of it and so forth.
So, I mean, everything that can be shaved off of this is gonna be helpful. Every resident has a number in their head that says, at this point, it's not worth fighting anymore. And to your point, you'd have to get to the majority, or somewhere in that range, to remove it as a collective,
Right.
you know,
As a
collective roadblock to it.
Correct, yes.
Because just because the vote, I want to understand, make this point, but just because the board votes on this and it goes through, that doesn't mean that could potentially be the end. If it's not palatable for enough people, it would just drag out and
Right.
keep going.
And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yes.
Under that particular option, it appears you're addressing the three main concerns, one being safety, two financial, and three the access
Right.
of the Commonwealth. And the access of other people.
Correct.
And
The
shutting
fact that you're shutting
section
that down makes it,
down.
which was,
Right.
That's a pretty good, crazy idea, Carl.
Yeah,
That's all right, like I said, I'm
no,
sorry.
I mean, it's awesome, and what's weird is just
Yeah.
why in the
Well, I was looking at it
heck?
from this angle, I'm always looking at it from that side, and I couldn't see it. Not your side, that side. Yeah, but,
No, I heard it right the first time.
So
yeah,
there will be
it
some-
flows this way.
Yeah.
I think it keeps the spirit of the subdivision.
I mean,
Yeah.
if it works.
And we'll look at exploring cost-saving options. We can definitely do that. Come up with a
Absolutely.
list.
Yeah, we could talk about that, but let's come up with a list, and then should we dial in or should we wait on coming up with a date for the informational meeting? Let these guys go back and kind of talk, and then
Yeah,
maybe
we should give them a
an opportunity.
solid week at least.
Well, that's why I was thinking before the next board
the-
meeting.
So 2 weeks.
Not,
In 2
right,
weeks.
2 weeks, the first board meeting in June, which is the first Thursday of June. I don't have my calendar with me.
That would be the 4th. is
So,
Monday,
just let me ask this, do we have, because people will ask, all right, I mean, is this for sure 100% table that nothing will happen this Thursday at the board meeting?
I won't be there.
Well, right now, it's,
And the only reason I ask, because
There's-
if we start talking, everybody will come, and if we're not prepared to talk about it,
I don't
as long
know.
as we can assure the residents,
There's nothing that
they
would
aren't
be on the
going to
agenda
push
for us
this
to do.
anything.
I think we did put it on, it's been writing.
well, you
on
guys
the-
talk at the same time a lot.
I'm sorry.
I can't keep
We're on the
track.
agenda.
You know what I mean?
A
Stab you in the
proposal
back.
From the
Yeah.
committee to the board this Thursday.
Yeah.
We should be anyway, because that was.
It just so
that was what
we
came
could
to mind.
alleviate the people that want to, that we have it, in confidence that nothing's gonna underhandedly happen. I'm not me saying it, and
No, absolutely. I don't know.
it's just way.
Even if it's on the agenda, we can table it, right?
Right, I mean, I have on the agenda the Michael Ritger assessment, the same thing that I put on each time, because I didn't know what was going to come out of it, so.
We'll just table it when it comes up and say, I can give the committee report on what was talked about. You're not gonna be here, so you're just gonna have to come up with something so I can kind of tell everybody what's going on. And it's not, there's no definites, there's no anythings, there's just another option that you guys are talking to the people of Parker Heights on, and we need to come up with some stuff for.
Well, and actually, I mean, this is going to be on our YouTube channel, so everybody can
Yeah.
watch
So
all
we'll-
2 hours.
Yeah, to tell you that. we're gonna
Listens.
To tell you that we're gonna talk about anything other than tabling it, I would say, no, there will be nothing that we do other than table it.
Well, we'll take no action on it. There'll be discussion because it's to
I-
update
because
on
The
this.
discussion will
Right.
be my updating the board on what.
Just
we
so,
talked about.
you know, it'll give, relief to residents that
We're not gonna do anything.
have to come, you know.
If they wanna come, I mean, it's always
No,
nice
I'm
to
not
have them.
saying not to come, but just so they know that
Well, how about,
nothing's gonna.
Well, and my point on saying this was because, I mean, it's on record
Right,
that
we're gonna
you
do.
just said it's not going to be, so.
So, I mean, we can put it out that, are you planning on talking about it, or just a general statement where we're working on it? Or
What I
just-
would, if it's okay with you guys, what I would like to say is, during our discussion about, you know, what our options were, Carl actually came up with a fourth option that addresses the cost implications, that addresses the safety implications, and it addresses the cost.
Access.
The village's needs.
And the village's needs. We're working through it right now, and basically it's this, but we're working through it with Brian and Jim and their people, and we're gonna have an informational meeting, hopefully before the next board meeting, where we discuss it with them, explain to them what we're trying to do, explain to them how we're trying to keep the costs and everything reduced, and just put an end to this and get this solution done and get everybody back to their daily stuff. That's kind of what I will say.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you
Yep.
guys.
Yep.
That's good to think. So Carl's gonna investigate rough ideas of
Yep.
numbers, and you're gonna look at both Parkers or versus buying the property, or is that gonna?
I think for
That
my,
one-
no, I'm sorry.
No, which, one? Okay,
Either one.
I'm sorry, there's,
I understand this is a cross.
That's more,
well, the TID part is, I mean, as far as buying, purchasing, the village purchasing Parkers or Parkers doing it, again, that's speculation, but those are the two scenarios that I actually already had Ellers run.
Okay.
So,
And you guys already had preliminary discussions with partners on that possibility.
very early, and he
Right.
frankly didn't get back to us. So I just figured, I took that as an assumption that it was dismissed.
We can certainly,
But that one, the weird part about TIDS, and this is where it was hard to give a hard, fast number saying if we have this many homes, this is how much it's going to drop, is because it's dependent on the value of the homes and also when they're built. So if it's built in year 1 versus year 3, that changes it completely. So I did have him run some scenarios of 4 homes in there. One, if it was Parkers that developed it and assuming 175,000. One, if the village did it, assuming 220,000. So those were the scenarios I ran. So and that's what I had sent. And I know it's Greek. It's just that I didn't know how else to
no,
get it out there.
And we
So those 2 things have already been done.
and we can certainly present that as a part of the whole cost savings thing when we put this together for the presentation, correct?
Yes, it's just
Can we
it's
do it in an easy fashion, or is it gonna just confuse?
TID in an easy fashion.
Well,
I mean, I
Even
John,
impossible.
TID in an easy fashion. I mean,
okay. Well, we'll come up with some,
are we talking about revenues from these lots?
yes. Here's a quick suggestion, getting back to what
Because
Brian.
those affect the TID.
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Right,
Those
absolutely,
affect how much
and that
money-
affects the assessment
How
too.
much
affects the
money comes
assessment.
back from the TID, which means it affects how much money.
mean, all
the
they
TID
need to
is
know
actually
is that-
worth, which means it reduces or increases the
I mean, at
assessment.
the end of the day,
Right.
all they need to know is, all the people need to know is, we're willing to take on the ownership of these to reduce the TID value by X.
Right,
Increase.
increase, yes,
What did I
but
say?
You said reduce.
decrease,
Oh, we
reduce.
know what you're saying
I'm
now.
sorry.
Yeah, you want to
And-
increase the TID.
and I think
Or
the-
reduce the assessment.
Reduce the assessment, I'm sorry.
The other reason why, there's a couple reasons why that, I had suggested that is, one, because it just alleviates it from Parkers, and then the village can be more, proactive in getting it in there, and then also, I thought it would be a benefit to the Parker Heights, because we could put
Right.
the condition on of a minimum value.
And not explaining it in an over-detailed fashion, it's literally, the village would be willing to take on the risk of buying this and developing them, I can't speak anymore, my apologies, to reduce their assessment.
Right, and that's one that I don't know if the village will be, it was something
To say
that,
that
It's an
is,
idea.
everybody's
Yeah.
gonna understand okay, they're trying to reduce my assessment. I don't care how they're doing it, whatever they're doing, whatever shell game they're
Yeah,
playing, they're gonna.
or you just say you're, investigating the
Right,
possibility
right,
of doing that to
absolutely.
reduce it, yeah. Diane, you did the numbers on that, so, like with the purchase and with that, does it actually save money? Because otherwise, because you're gonna lose the $100,000 assessment on Parker.
Right, and I'd have to look at the numbers that Ellers ran again. If memory serves me right, it was a little bit more. It wasn't significant, but I didn't. I'd have to look at it again because I didn't go any farther with it because he never got back to us. So I didn't think it was.
But should potentially go up, but your assessment funds are gonna go down.
Right, but
because Parker's not gonna pay the $100,000,
Right,
so
exactly.
Correct.
you make up more than that.
But the
and-
reason why we made the assumption, when we ran when Ellers ran the numbers, the reason why it came out more positive is because it was being assumed to develop earlier in the
Okay.
time-wise, because the village would have more incentive
Now we're developing.
to sell them for less and get it in there. Whereas if Parkers were assessed 100,000, we assumed they would hold out longer to get the number that they needed to offset the
lot.
100,000. So
Longer before development.
that's why
Yeah,
it's
okay,
just such a balancing act.
But
Yeah,
again.
that's why I asked you, because I,
Really what we need to say, I think, is that we're willing to take on, the village would be willing to take on the risk, and that's what we're taking. We're taking the risk.
Depending on the cost,
Correct.
because that's the
We
other,
would be taking the risk of saying, okay, if we sell them sooner, which we think we can if we're gonna be the developer, the TID would go down. I mean, they need to know, I think everyone needs to know that the village is putting skin in the game to try to help reduce your assessments.
well, and see, I didn't get into that because it's making assumptions about privately owned property, and he never got back, so that's why,
But we, at this point, I think if we make the assumptions and we say he's gonna sell it to us, well, now, there are people that maybe can put a little bit more pressure on him to sell it.
Here's kind of backtracking a little bit, but I think this would be a good idea to put some at ease more, is if, I can't remember if it was Brian or Jim that had asked about any action being taken tomorrow. Why doesn't this committee make a motion that the recommendation to the board would be just to update them and to delay further action?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, all in favor, sorry. All opposed? And we have none.
Well, whatever.
I
This
just
is a
have-
bird in the hand situation. That's.
Oh, no, I get it.
And what I'll do is, these minutes are gonna be pretty scarce, but I'll type up these minutes and I'll include them with the board packet tomorrow, and I'll get them out to you guys. That way, everybody has them in advance of the actual board meeting.
Perfect. Like I said, we'll try to make it just a short, sweet, this is where we're at and this is where we're going type of an update. So. All right.
That was an awesome idea, Carl.
Is there
That was
anything
really
else that we want to talk about? Then I would, if not, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
well,
John, thank you.
one thing would be, so we're gonna go back and talk to the residents.
Yep.
And if we get, there's all these, I know there's all these rules about how many people you can contact and what you can do. And so that's where I'm saying, I wanted to bring up as to what, if we get, so say we get some feedback that we say, well, this would be a really good idea, to off of this, or that this sparks something different. Is there some way that we can set up a tentative meeting of this committee if necessary?
Absolutely.
Before the recommendation to the board.
Sure, why don't you come, just, if somebody comes up with, another brilliant idea and says, hey,
Yeah.
somebody came up with this, can we meet again? Absolutely.
You know what would be great, Carl, or whoever, Diane, someone, you could send us a mock-up.
Yeah, I'll draw it up better.
Yeah, something
It's
that you
really,
can
because I
show.
know like when I walked,
Visual.
well, you
Yeah.
did more
You
walk
need
around than I
something
did,
to
but
show.
I had the plot map and
Yep.
kind of laid it out in front of
Just how
people so they can
difficult would that
visually
be?
see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I know you're busy.
You could do it like I do. I used to do that for a living when I first started. It's make map. I was a map maker, but you could do what I do and just photocopy it and then color it in.
You
And
don't have to do it, do you?
No, I
Okay.
don't have anything
All
fancy.
right, we should get that.
So,
for you. Okay, anything else?
I think that, I have one suggestion that it is an offshoot from this, but I think would maybe help, depending on how it's laid out, is, if there is a layout somewhere of the cottages development in relation to the Michael Richter Road.
This development.
Yes, correct. Because I threw something together from what I had, and then with the Google Maps, and tried to line up the roads and tried to scale
I
it.
actually did that already, but,
You
I
did?
didn't share it.
Yeah, because it's really hard to visualize, and I think if you throw that road in right there, and then you say, okay, this is how far off of the road,
Okay.
the buildings are, this is, and if you get some kind of scale to.
Again, more
because
visual
they're-
to point across.
the point that it doesn't make sense for them to put an access, isn't enough for a lot of the people to look at it and say it doesn't make sense to put an access, right? So I think that might help. Okay.
Does the village ever get any deals on trees or blockage?
The government never gets deals on anything.
That's true.
They, yeah,
And we
Well, I
wouldn't be
would
able
say-
to anyway, because it's private
not our
property.
yeah.
I'm guessing you're
I know
talking
where you're
about,
going with it, but it's not.
Yeah.
I'd put them on my property before I put them on theirs. So,
Yeah.
and just so everybody knows in this group too, is I just found out this afternoon that they're actually starting tomorrow,
Starting,
construction there.
construction.
Yeah, they called me this afternoon.
I know, so you're saying it slopes down, Carl? So
Yeah.
they're up and everything slopes down?
They're down,
They're down. It's on the
They're
road.
down, it slopes up.
yeah. Slopes up to your property and slopes up to the.
So you
my-
kind of, sort of have an
Brickwork.
inverted berm, I'll call it. But we just send that, if you could send that out to everybody.
Or a ditch.
Or ditch, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah,
That was good, Jeannie. I gotta say, that was a good one.
Sorry.
They wanna throw their dirt and make a huge berm on their property. I don't know.
well, one nice thing is, they did push it further that way away from your house.
No, I saw that. They're like 100-some feet off. Now my neighbor.
Well, if they're 100 feet, that's certainly large. I mean, we could ask, we can't,
We
No,
should,
I-
you guys,
yeah.
we should really not have this part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Okay,
all right.
so,
So that's all I got.
with anything else, does anybody else have anything for the good of the group?
Yep.
If not, then I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.